I transmigrated into a trashy wish fulfillment novel as the adopted fake young master of the most powerful family in the country, with a system glued to my soul, whose one and only mission was to help me escape this family before the real heir came back and got me killed. Simple plan, foolproof plan. And then, at dinner, in front of all 5 of my terrifyingly overpowered older sisters and both parents, my telepathic system glitched, broadcast my entire inner monologue to the whole table at once, and the first complete thought every single one of them heard in crystal clarity was, "Wow, the eldest sister's fiancé is definitely cheating on her, and also, I'm pretty sure he steals office supplies." Let me back up, because the look on my future brother-in-law's face when that sentence hit the table is the single greatest thing I have ever witnessed, and it deserves proper build-up. My name in this life is Julian Reed. Jules. 3 weeks ago, I was a normal guy with a normal job, and then I fell asleep reading a garbage web novel called My 5 Domineering Sisters Dote on Me, and I woke up inside it, in the body of its single most doomed minor character. Because here's the thing about that novel. It's not about me. I'm not the protagonist. The protagonist is Cameron Hayes, the family's real biological son, who was switched at birth and raised in poverty, and who returns, around chapter 40, to reclaim his rightful place. And when he returns, the story has exactly one use for me, the fake young master who occupied his spot. I exist to be humiliated, exposed, cast out, and, in the original novel's words, which I have memorized out of pure survival instinct, disposed of as a cautionary tale. The real heir comes home, everyone realizes I'm a fraud who's been living his life, and they throw me into the gutter where, the novel cheerfully notes, I die of exposure within a year, while the real family lives happily ever after. So you can understand my motivation. I don't want the family's billions. I don't want the doting sisters. I don't want any part of a story whose ending has my name on a tombstone. I want out. I want to take whatever I can quietly liquidate, change my name, move to a fishing village, and be 1,000 miles away when Cameron Hayes comes home to claim his birthright. Let him have it. Let him have all of it. I just want to live. And the universe, in a rare act of mercy, gave me a tool. The day I woke up in Jules's body, a translucent blue window appeared in my vision, and a voice that sounds like a sarcastic teenager who's been awake for 40 hours announced itself. Escape the Vance family system activated. Designation, Melon. Primary directive, extract host from the Vance family with maximum assets and minimum attachment before the return of the true heir. Warning, the host's survival probability if still embedded in the family at the heir's return is 4%. Recommendation, leave. Quickly. And whatever you do, host, do not let these people grow attached to you. Doting families do not let their assets walk away. Stay cold, stay distant, stay forgettable. Earn escape points by creating emotional distance and spend them on extraction resources. Do you understand the assignment? I understood the assignment. The assignment was, be a forgettable, distant, slightly disappointing fake brother that nobody would miss, while quietly building an escape fund, and then vanish before chapter 40. The assignment, it turns out, is impossible, for reasons I'm about to explain. But on the night of the dinner, I still thought I had a chance. I need to tell you about my sisters, because they are the central obstacle, and because they are, individually and collectively, the most exhausting people in any universe. The Vance family has 5 daughters, and until I was adopted as a baby to complete the family, no sons, which means I am the youngest child and the only boy, which means that in the eyes of 5 older sisters, I am less a brother and more a beloved pet, a hobby, and a full-time project. There's Genevieve, the eldest, 29, the heir apparent to the Vance corporate empire, a woman so cold and competent that grown executives have wept in her presence, who runs 3 companies before breakfast and has the emotional accessibility of a bank vault, except, inexplicably, toward me, at whom she occasionally directs a look of such fierce protectiveness that it makes my soul itch. Genevieve is engaged to Arthur Davies, the man whose face I am about to ruin. A smooth, handsome, well-connected gentleman whom the entire capital considers the perfect match, and whom I have privately clocked, within 3 weeks, as a cheating, embezzling, office supply-stealing fraud. A read I've been keeping carefully to myself because the system's whole strategy is don't get involved, don't get attached, don't make yourself memorable. There's Penelope, 26, who everyone calls Penny, a chaos goblin in designer clothes, a social media celebrity with 11 million followers, and the impulse control of a toddler at a fireworks factory, who treats my life as content and has tried to put me in roughly 40 of her videos. There's Bianca, 25, the family's head of security, a martial artist who could kill a man with a teaspoon and who communicates primarily in stern silences and protein, and who has appointed herself my personal bodyguard despite my repeated, system-mandated attempts to seem like someone not worth guarding. There's Hazel, 23, the soft one, a genuine medical genius, a doctor and researcher of terrifying brilliance wrapped in the personality of a worried marshmallow, who notices when I haven't eaten and brings me tea and looks at me with big concerned eyes that make the escape points counter in my vision actually tick backward. And there's Skylar, 21, the youngest sister. Sky, a sly, brilliant, perpetually online gremlin who games competitively, schemes recreationally, and has, I am almost certain, figured out that something is weird about me, because she watches me with the specific narrow-eyed interest of a cat that has noticed the laser pointer is being held by a human hand. These 5 women love me, inexplicably, overwhelmingly, and in 5 completely incompatible ways, they love me. And the system's directive to make them not love me has been, for 3 weeks, like trying to make the ocean less wet. Every cold, distant, forgettable thing I do, they reinterpret as adorable. I skip a family breakfast to seem aloof. Hazel decides I'm overworked and the whole family clears my schedule. I'm curt with Genevieve to create distance. She decides I'm finally developing executive presence and starts grooming me for the board. I tell Bianca I don't need a bodyguard. She takes it as a challenge and doubles the detail. The escape points counter has been stuck near 0 for 3 weeks because there is apparently no behavior so cold that 5 doting sisters can't metabolize it into a reason to love me more. Which brings us to the dinner, and the glitch, and the office supplies. It was the formal weekly family dinner, the one even Genevieve clears her schedule for. All 7 of us, plus Arthur Davies, who attended these dinners as the eldest sister's fiancé and used them, I'd noticed, to perform the role of perfect future son-in-law with an oily precision that nobody but me seemed to find suspicious. We were halfway through the soup course. Arthur was telling a charming story about his charitable foundation. Genevieve was watching him with the faint, fond half-smile she reserved for him and almost no one else. And I was sitting at the foot of the table thinking my usual dinner thoughts, which is to say a continuous private stream of survival calculations and uncharitable observations, completely safe inside my own skull, the way thoughts are supposed to be. And then Melon made a noise I'd never heard it make, a kind of digital hiccup. "Warning," the system said, and for the first time its sarcastic teenager voice sounded alarmed. "Telepathic relay module experiencing a cascade failure. Host, I need you to stop thinking. Host, stop thinking right now. The channel is... Oh no. Oh no! Host, the channel is open. The channel is broadcasting to everyone in a 10-foot radius. Host, clear your mind." You ever try to clear your mind the instant someone tells you your every thought is being broadcast to your entire family? It's like trying not to think of a pink elephant, except the pink elephant is every single uncensored opinion you've ever had about the people staring at you. My mind, ordered to go blank, did the exact opposite. It produced, with the helpful enthusiasm of a brain in total panic, the loudest and most complete thought I'd had all evening, the one I'd been sitting on for 3 weeks, and it broadcast it in high-definition surround sound to all 7 members of the Vance family, plus Arthur Davies. Wow, the eldest sister's fiancé is definitely cheating on her, and also I'm pretty sure he steals office supplies. Like, who carries that many of someone else's pens? And his story about the foundation is fake. The numbers don't even work, and he's been checking his phone under the table all night and angling it away from Sarah, which is textbook affair behavior. And honestly, the way he looks at her is the way you look at a winning lottery ticket, not a person. And I cannot believe I'm the only one at this table who sees it. The soup course stopped. I want to describe the silence, because it was a profound and solid silence. The silence of a record scratch made physical. the silence of 8 people simultaneously realizing that a thought has occurred outside of a skull. Arthur Davies's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Genevieve's fond half-smile did not move, but her eyes, her terrible, brilliant, ice-cold eyes, slid slowly off her fiancé and on to me, and then slowly back to her fiancé. And I watched the most dangerous corporate mind in the country begin in real time to run the numbers. And then Penny, 11 million followers, zero filter, said out loud what everyone was thinking. Wait, did everyone else just hear that? In their head? Or am I having a stroke? Jules, was that you? Can you broadcast? Oh my God, do it again. Please don't do it again, I said weakly, out loud with my actual mouth. But it was too late, because the channel, Melon informed me in a tiny, mortified voice, was now stuck open, and I had 3 weeks of carefully hidden survival observations loaded in my head like a clip in a gun. And 5 sisters and 2 parents and 1 rapidly paling fiancé were all now connected to the one place I'd thought was private, and the dinner that was supposed to be just another forgettable evening in my quiet escape plan was about to become the single most important meal of my entire transmigrated life. Theodore, Genevieve said. Her voice was very calm. The calm of deep water over something with teeth. Don't clear your mind. Whatever just happened, keep it open. She set down her spoon with a click that sounded like a gavel. I'd like to hear the rest of your thoughts about Arthur, all of them, in detail. She did not look at her fiancé. She looked at me, and the protectiveness in her eyes had been joined by something colder and far more focused, the look of a woman who has just been handed a key to a locked room she'd been told didn't exist. Take your time. Be thorough. I have. And here the temperature of the entire dining room dropped 10 degrees. All night. And across the table, Arthur Davies, perfect fiancé, charming gentleman, secret cheater and confirmed pen thief, opened his mouth to launch the performance of his life. And I felt my brain, traitorously, helpfully, broadcast my very next thought to the entire table. Oh, he's going to lie. Look at him winding up. 3, 2, 1. Sweetheart, Arthur began. I have no idea what your strange little brother is. Wow, okay, he went with strange little brother, classic deflection, and his left eye just twitched, which it does when he lies. I've cataloged it. Also, he definitely has another phone, a second phone. I've seen the outline in his jacket. Arthur's hand flew to his jacket, involuntarily, protectively, right over the inner pocket, in front of everyone. The whole table looked at the jacket. Arthur looked at the jacket. Arthur looked at the table, looking at the jacket. And in the back of my panicking mind, under the broadcasting and the mortification and the certain knowledge that I had just blown my entire forgettable and distant strategy to smithereens, the system, Melon, made one last small despairing sound and updated my vision with a notification I would treasure for the rest of my life. Escape points, -400. Host. You have just made yourself the single most memorable person in this family's history. Extraction probability, plummeting. On the upside. A pause. That man is absolutely going down, and they are never, ever going to let you leave now. Bon appetit. What followed was less a dinner and more a public execution catered by a private chef, and I had the worst seat in the house, which was also somehow the most powerful. Because every time Arthur Davies opened his mouth to lie, my traitor brain helpfully fact-checked him to the entire table in real time. I have never wanted a superpower less. I have never had a more useful one. Sweetheart, this is absurd, Arthur said, recovering, smooth as ever, spreading his hands in wounded innocence. Your brother is clearly unwell, some kind of episode. You can't possibly take the ravings of a confused boy over the word of the man who loves you. He's doing the foundation voice, my brain announced to the room. He uses a special warm voice when he's lying about loving someone. I've heard him use it on the phone with at least 2 other women. Oh, one of them is named Chloe, and one of them is named... Hang on, he calls her Kitten, so I never got the real name. Arthur's smooth expression cracked exactly down the middle. Chloe, Genevieve repeated softly. She had not raised her voice once. She had not needed to. And Kitten. She tilted her head a fraction of a degree, which on Genevieve was the equivalent of another woman flipping a table. Arthur, give me your jacket. Sarah, you cannot seriously— The jacket, Arthur. This is a violation of my— Valeria, said Genevieve, in the exact same calm voice, and my second oldest sister, the martial artist head of security who had been sitting at the table radiating quiet menace this entire time, was out of her chair and across the room before Arthur finished his sentence. She did not touch him. She simply stood beside his chair, 6 feet of disciplined violence in a cocktail dress, and held out one hand, palm up, and looked at him with the patient expression of a woman who has removed jackets from far more difficult men. Arthur, to his credit, lasted almost 2 full seconds before he took off the jacket and handed it over. Bianca passed it to Genevieve. Genevieve reached into the inner pocket, the one Arthur had grabbed so protectively, and removed a second phone. A cheap, anonymous burner phone, the kind of phone a man only carries for one reason. And the entire table watched the eldest daughter of the Vance family, the Ice Queen, the corporate titan, the woman who had looked at this man with the only soft expression she owned, turn on the second phone and read whatever was on the screen, and not a single muscle moved in her face, which was somehow the most devastating thing of all. 41 messages, she said, from Kitten, 18 from Chloe, and a photo I will not be describing at the dinner table. She set the phone down with the same gavel click as before. Jewels, office supplies, embezzlement, the foundation numbers don't work, expand. And here is where my survival instinct and my superpower had a brief, vicious argument, and my superpower won, because 3 weeks of biting my tongue came pouring out in a flood I couldn't have stopped if I'd wanted to. The foundation's a shell, I broadcast, helplessly, completely. I looked at the public filings because I was bored, and the donations going in don't match the grants going out. The difference is about $2 million a year, and it routes through a consulting company that's just him. Also, he's been expensing personal stuff to your companies, Sarah. He put a vacation with Kitten on the Vance corporate card and labeled it site visit. And yes, the pens, he genuinely just takes everyone's pens. I've watched him pocket like 9 pens at these dinners. I don't even know why. I think it's a compulsion. The cheating is the bigger issue, but I needed you to know about the pens. He stole my limited edition fountain pen, said Hazel, the soft marshmallow doctor sister, in a small, wounded voice. And the whole table turned to look at her, and she went pink. 3 weeks ago, I thought I lost it. It was a gift. Her big, concerned eyes narrowed, just slightly, and for the first time I saw the steel that apparently lived under the marshmallow. I really like that pen, Arthur. This is insane, Arthur said, standing now, his charm entirely gone, replaced by the ugly flop sweat of a cornered man. You're all going to take this, whatever he is, this freak who can apparently shove thoughts into people's heads, over me? He's not even a real Vance. He's adopted. He's some nobody you took in out of charity, and now he's broadcasting lies to break us up because... Careful, said 3 sisters at once. I want to record the temperature of that moment because it changed everything. Arthur had said the one thing, the true thing, the thing the original novel was built on, the thing the system had spent 3 weeks telling me was my deepest vulnerability. He's not a real Vance. He's adopted. He's a nobody. And in the original novel, that's the card that ruins me when Cameron comes home. That's the trump card. Not even a real Vance. And Arthur played it, at the dinner table, in front of everyone, expecting it to land the way it lands in the book, expecting the family to suddenly see me as the outsider, the fraud, the disposable fake. Instead, the entire table went Arctic, and not at me, at him. Arthur, said Genevieve, rising from her chair. And now, finally, there was something in her voice beyond the calm, something that made even me want to hide under the table. Theodore is my brother. He has been my brother since he was 4 days old. Blood is a detail. He is a Vance in every way that has ever mattered, and you have just tried to use the circumstances of his adoption as a weapon against him at my dinner table, which tells me everything I need to know about the quality of person I almost married. She walked slowly around the table toward him. You cheated on me. You stole from my companies. You embezzled from a charity. These are crimes, and I will be addressing them with my legal team thoroughly for the next several years of your life. But the thing I will never forgive, the thing that just moved you from mistake to enemy, is that your first instinct when cornered was to attack my little brother for being adopted. She stopped in front of him. Bianca, please escort Mr. Foster off the property. He may keep the pens. He may not keep anything else, including, I suspect, his foundation, his consulting company, or his freedom. Have the legal team start in the morning. I'll need his second phone for evidence, I said helpfully, out loud this time. And honestly, the embezzlement is provable. The corporate card thing alone is. You'll consult with my legal team directly, Genevieve said, not even looking at me, which from her was a profound act of trust. You clearly have a head for it. And then Bianca removed Arthur Davies from the dining room the way a bouncer removes a problem, firmly, efficiently, and with the faint air of someone who'd been hoping all evening for an excuse. And the front door closed, and Arthur Davies, perfect fiancé, charming gentleman, the man the whole capital thought was the catch of the season, was gone from my family's life forever, undone in a single dinner by an adopted little brother with a glitching telepathic system and 3 weeks of resentfully catalogued observations. The dining room was quiet. The soup had gone cold. 6 members of the Vance family slowly turned in unison to look at me, sitting mortified at the foot of the table, and I felt the system melon cringe in my peripheral vision. So, said Penny, the chaos goblin, her eyes shining with an intensity that made my survival instincts scream. You can read minds. You've been able to read minds. And you knew Arthur was trash this whole time and just, what, sat on it? Out of politeness? She leaned forward, 11 million followers crackling behind her eyes. Jules, baby brother, light of my life, what else do you know? Nothing, I said. I know nothing. I have no thoughts. My mind is a peaceful, empty meadow. His mind is absolutely not a peaceful, empty meadow, my brain announced to the table. He's panicking. He's trying to figure out how to play this down so we don't get attached because for some reason he wants us to not. And I physically clapped both hands over my own mouth, which did absolutely nothing because the broadcasting was coming from my brain, not my face. And the entire family watched me try to muzzle a thought with my palms and arrived, collectively, at the conclusion that I was the most fascinating and adorable creature they had ever encountered. He covered his mouth, Hazel whispered, delighted and concerned in equal measure. To stop the thoughts. Oh, that's the saddest thing I've ever seen. Jules, sweetheart, you don't have to stop the thoughts. We love your thoughts. Please do not love my thoughts, I said. Too late, said Skylar, the youngest, the gremlin, speaking for the first time all evening, and when I looked at her, she was watching me with that narrow-eyed cat and laser pointer expression. Except now it had teeth in it. The specific satisfaction of someone whose suspicions have just been spectacularly confirmed. I knew something was up with you. 3 weeks of aloof and distant, and it never once felt real. You've been performing, like you're trying to get us to not notice you. She propped her chin on her hand. Why would someone with a literal mind-reading superpower, living in the richest family in the country, surrounded by sisters who'd burn down a city for him, spend all his energy trying to be forgettable? Her eyes glittered. That's a really interesting question, big brother. I'm going to figure out the answer. I'm very good at figuring out answers. In my vision, Melon updated the escape points counter, which was now somehow even more negative than before, and added a notification in a small, defeated font. Host, I want to be clear about the situation. You have exposed and destroyed the eldest sister's fiancé, revealed a previously secret telepathic ability, demonstrated a head for forensic accounting, and triggered the protective and investigative instincts of all 5 sisters simultaneously. The youngest one is now actively hunting your secret. Your escape strategy, which was be forgettable and distant, is no longer viable, on account of you being the least forgettable person on the planet. I am updating the primary directive. To what? I thought with dread. Working on it, said Melon. Give me a minute. This is a disaster, a genuinely unprecedented disaster. In 4,000 simulated runs of this scenario, no host has ever set the dining room on fire this badly on the first night. You've broken my model. I'm almost impressed. Eat your soup. It's cold now, but you've earned it. And at the head of the table, my mother and father, who had said nothing this entire time, who had simply watched their 5 daughters and their adopted son detonate a wedding engagement over cold soup, exchanged a long look, and then my mother, the matriarch of the Vance family, a woman whose business acumen made Genevieve look soft, smiled at me with a warmth that made my doomed little heart clench, and said, "Well, that was the best dinner we've had in years. Jules, darling, come sit closer to me. I want to hear absolutely everything you think about the rest of the family's romantic prospects. Take your time. We're all family here." She patted the chair beside her. "And don't worry about the mind reading. In this family, that's barely top 5 strangest things at the table. Now, tell me, what do you really think of the people your sisters have been dating?" I looked at my mother's warm, terrifying, expectant face. I looked at 5 sisters leaning in with 5 different flavors of dangerous interest. I looked at the escape points counter sitting at negative numbers in the corner of my vision. And I understood, with the cold clarity of a man watching his only exit get bricked up in real time, that I was not going to escape this family before Chapter 40. I was, somehow, going to have to survive them instead. The week after the soup dinner, before I figured out the new directive, before any of the serious business with Cameron, was what the family now refers to, fondly, as the week of awful timing, because the telepathic channel that Melon couldn't fully close kept glitching open at the single worst possible moment in every situation. And I would like to walk you through it, because comedy is the only thing that got me through it, and I refuse to suffer alone. The thing you have to understand about the broadcast glitch is that it has a malevolent sense of dramatic timing. It does not open when I'm thinking something boring. It waits. It lurks. It bides its time through hours of me thinking about laundry and tax law, and then, the instant I have a thought I would die before saying aloud, it flings the doors wide and broadcasts it in surround sound to everyone within 10 feet. Melon insists this is a relay calibration issue and not, as I have accused, the system being a comedian. The jury is still out. The first incident was at breakfast the very next morning. I was still raw from the dinner, still convinced I'd ruined everything, sitting quietly while the family pretended this was a normal meal. Genevieve walked in dressed for a board presentation, sharp and severe, and asked the table, "Does this read as too aggressive for the merger meeting?" And I thought, safely, privately, inside my own skull. She could ask a wall for fashion advice, and the wall would say, "You look incredible, please don't fire me." She's terrifying. It's a good suit, though. Very, I will end your company and your bloodline. 10 out of 10. And the channel glitched open on the word terrifying and broadcast the rest. And Genevieve froze, and the whole table froze. And then my Ice Queen sister did something I'd never seen her do. She laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her, and she said, "I will end your company and your bloodline." Yes, that's exactly the read I wanted. "Thank you, Jules. You're the only honest stylist I've ever had." And she swept out. And I realized, slowly, that the thing I'd been most afraid of, my unfiltered thoughts reaching them, was somehow making them love me more. Because it turns out that in a world of people who tell powerful women what they want to hear, a brother who accidentally broadcasts the brutal truth is a treasure. This did not make the glitch less mortifying. It just meant I was mortified and beloved simultaneously, which is its own special torment. The second incident was with Penny, who spent the week following me with her camera, trying to capture the mind-reading thing for content. I refused, repeatedly, firmly, out loud. And then she cornered me in the kitchen and started one of her vlog intros. "Hey, besties, so my brother has a secret power and he won't..." And the channel glitched and broadcast my thought. If she points that camera at me one more time, I'm going to tell her followers about the time she cried for 2 hours because a duck at the park didn't like her. And Penny gasped and lowered the camera and said, "You wouldn't." And I said out loud, "Try me, gremlin." And we stared at each other in a standoff of mutually assured destruction. And that was the moment, Penny tells everyone now, that she stopped seeing me as content and started seeing me as a worthy adversary, and eventually, her favorite person. The duck story remains under seal. It is my nuclear deterrent. I will not hesitate. The third incident is the one I'm least proud of and the family enjoys most. We were at a formal dinner with the Hendersons, a stuffy, old money family the Vances do business with, all of us on our best behavior, and the sterling patriarch was holding forth at length and tediously about his golf game. And I was nodding politely and thinking, with the despair of a man 40 minutes into a golf monologue, I would rather be waterboarded than hear about the 17th hole, please, sir. I'm begging you. I have so much money, I will pay you any amount to stop talking about par. And the channel glitched and broadcast all of it to the entire table, including the Hendersons. There was a silence of pure horror. And then old Sterling's stern wife, who had clearly been suffering through 40 years of the 17th hole, burst into tears of laughter and said, "Oh, thank God, someone finally said it." And the dinner transformed instantly into the best evening anyone present had had in years, and the Hendersons signed the deal on the spot, and my mother declared me, officially, the family's lucky charm. I had insulted a business partner directly into his brain, and it had closed a deal. Nothing about my new life made sense, and I had stopped expecting it to. But the week of awful timing wasn't all comedy, because the glitch is no respecter of feelings, and twice that week it opened on something that wasn't funny at all, and those moments mattered more than the laughs. The first was with Hazel. She'd brought me tea the way she does, and she was looking at me with those big, worried eyes, and she asked gently, "Jules, are you okay? Really? You've seemed so far away since you came back from the bad spell. Like you're always somewhere else. Like you're always about to leave." And I thought, before I could stop it, the channel sensing blood. I am about to leave. I'm planning to leave. I'm going to disappear on all of you, and it's killing me because you keep being so kind, and I don't deserve it, and I can't tell you why. And the channel broadcast it, but only to Hazel, one of Melon's rare mercies, and my soft scientist sister set down the tea and looked at me for a long, long moment. And she didn't get angry, and she didn't demand an explanation. She just said quietly, "Whatever you're carrying, whatever you think you have to run from, you don't have to carry it alone. I don't need to know what it is. I just need you to know that there's no version of this where leaving is the answer. We're not the kind of family you escape, Jules. We're the kind you come home to." And she squeezed my hand and left me alone with my cooling tea and the dawning, terrifying suspicion that she was right, that I'd been trying to escape the one thing I'd always wanted. And it was the first crack in the system's whole strategy, delivered by the gentlest person in the house. The second was with Bianca, and it's the one that broke me open. She'd been teaching me to fight all week, ostensibly because a Vance should be able to defend himself. And I'd been bad at it, and frustrated, and during one session I went down hard and stayed down, and she crouched over me, stern as ever, and asked, "Why do you keep holding back? You fight like someone who doesn't think he's allowed to win, who doesn't think he's allowed to take up space. Why?" And the channel glitched and broadcast the thing I'd never said to anyone, the thing under all the other things. Because I'm not really supposed to be here, because I'm wearing someone else's life, because every good thing in this house belongs to a boy who's gone, and I'm just a stranger pretending. And a stranger pretending doesn't get to fight for things, he just gets to be grateful until he's thrown out. And it broadcast all of it, to Bianca, the silent warrior, the one who communicates in grunts and protein, and she went very still. And then she sat down on the mat beside me, which she never does, and she was quiet for a while, and then she said, in the longest speech I ever heard her give, "When I was 9, I broke my arm and cried, and the original Jules, 4 years old, sat with me the whole time and wouldn't leave, even though he was scared of the hospital. I don't know where that little boy's soul went. I grieve him. But the person in his body now sat up all night when my mole almost got someone killed, and dug through interviews until he found the traitor, and protected my whole department, and never once asked for credit. That's not a stranger pretending. That's a brother fighting for his sister. The boy I knew would be glad it was you. So stop holding back. You're allowed to win. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to fight for what's yours. And this family is yours. I'll break the arm of anyone who says otherwise, including you." And then she pulled me to my feet and threw me again and said, "Now fight like you mean it." And I did, for the first time. And I learned that day that the glitch wasn't my enemy after all, because every time it tore a hole in my walls, my family climbed through it to reach me. And a man whose every secret keeps getting broadcast to people who love him eventually runs out of secrets to be afraid of. By the end of the week of awful timing, the glitch had broadcast nearly every uncharitable thought, every buried fear, and every desperate secret I had, except the two big ones, the transmigration and the novel, which I somehow kept locked down through sheer terror. And instead of destroying me, the week had bound me to the family tighter than anything else could have. Because they'd heard the worst of me, the pettiness, the fear, the plan to run, and they'd chosen me through all of it, glitch by glitch, thought by mortifying thought. Melon, who'd spent the week wincing, summarized it best. Host, I have to admit something. My directive was to keep you distant and forgettable, and the relay glitch has done the precise opposite by exposing your every private thought to your family at the worst possible moments. By every metric in my model, this should have been catastrophic. Instead, your attachment scores with all 5 sisters have gone vertical, because it turns out that being unable to hide your thoughts from people who love you is the fastest way to be truly known. And being truly known and loved anyway is the thing every human in every world is secretly starving for. A pause. I'm beginning to think my original directive was stupid, host. I'm beginning to think the glitch isn't a malfunction. I'm beginning to think it's the cure. Anyway, brace yourself. Sunday dinner's tomorrow, and your mother has invited the entire extended family, and I cannot promise the channel will stay closed, and you have a lot of opinions about your cousin's haircut. Melon delivered the new directive at 3 in the morning, while I lay awake in my absurdly large bedroom, doing the math on how thoroughly I'd ruined my own survival plan. New primary directive, the system announced, jolting me out of a spiral. Effective immediately. The old plan, extraction before the heir's return, has a revised success probability of 2%, down from 4, because you are now the most beloved and closely watched member of this family, and they will notice if you so much as skip breakfast. Trying to sneak away from 5 women who can read your, my telepathic signal across a dinner table is no longer feasible. A pause. So we pivot. New directive. Instead of escaping the family, you will make yourself so genuinely indispensable, so deeply embedded, so structurally necessary to this family's survival, that when the true heir returns and tries to cast you out as a fraud, the family chooses you. You don't run from Chapter 40, host. You rewrite it. You make throw out the fake young master the one order this family will never obey, because by then, throwing you out would cost them everything. I sat up in the dark. That's Melon. That's the opposite of the entire plan. The plan was distance, forgettable. Now you want me to become load-bearing? To this family? Of overpowered lunatics? The plan was distance when distance was possible, Melon said, with the weary patience of an AI that has watched its host ruin a perfectly good strategy. Distance is no longer possible. You set fire to distance over cold soup. The only move left is the other direction, all the way in. Become the keystone. It's riskier, it's harder, and it requires you to actually engage with these people instead of avoiding them, which I know you've been treating as a fate worse than death. But it's the only path with a survival probability above single digits. Escape points are now earned by becoming indispensable. The counter is reset. Go make yourself necessary, host, and try to enjoy it, because the alternative is the gutter in Chapter 40. So that was the new game. Stop running. Dig in. Become so essential, the family would defend me against their own returning blood son. Which meant I had to stop avoiding my 5 terrifying sisters and start, God help me, actually getting involved in their lives. And the universe, sensing my reluctance, immediately served up 5 separate disasters, 1 per sister, because this family does not do anything quietly. It started with Arthur's revenge, because of course a cornered embezzler doesn't just slink away. 2 days after the dinner, Genevieve's legal team filed against him, and Arthur, who still had connections and a vicious streak, struck back the only way a man like him knows how, through the press. By Thursday, an anonymous story was circulating. Vance heiress's secret shame. All about how the cold corporate princess Genevieve Vance had been manipulated and humiliated by her own adopted brother, a disturbed young man with delusions, who'd fabricated lies to destroy her engagement out of jealousy. It was Arthur's narrative, polished and planted, and it was clever because it reframed the whole dinner. Not a cheater exposed, but a poor, confused fiancé driven off by a jealous freak of an adopted brother. It even hinted that maybe the family should reconsider the troubled boy they'd taken in. It was, I realized with a chill, the exact narrative the original novel uses to cast me out, deployed early by Arthur as revenge. And here's where the new directive proved its worth, because the old me, the distance and escape me, would have seen that headline and thought, perfect, let them believe it, let them cool on me, it makes leaving easier. But I couldn't leave anymore. So instead I did something I'd never done in 3 weeks in this family. I walked into Genevieve's home office, where she was staring at the headline with a face like a closing glacier, and I sat down across from her, and I said, I can prove all of it. The cheating, the embezzlement, the foundation. I've already got most of it documented because I'm a paranoid insomniac with a superpower. Arthur wants to make this a story about a crazy, jealous brother versus a wronged fiancé. So let's not fight the story. Let's make the story irrelevant by burying him in evidence so fast and so completely that there's nothing left to spin. I slid a folder across her desk, the documentation I'd been compiling since the dinner. I'm good at finding the rot in things, Sarah. It's kind of my whole deal now. Let me find all of his. You handle the legal and the press. I'll handle the digging. We do it together. Genevieve looked at the folder. Then she looked at me, and something happened in her Ice Queen face that I'd never seen directed at me with words attached. A kind of startled warmth, and she said quietly, You've never offered to help me with anything. 3 weeks and you've kept everyone at arm's length, including me. Especially me. She opened the folder and her eyes sharpened at the contents. This is thorough. This is genuinely excellent forensic work. She looked up. Why now? What changed? And my brain, traitor that it is, broadcast the answer before I could craft a diplomatic lie. Except this time the channel was apparently private to just the two of us. A small mercy Melon was apparently capable of when I wasn't panicking. Because I can't leave anymore, and I'm terrified, and the only way I survive is if you all need me. And somewhere in the last 2 days I stopped being able to tell whether I'm helping you because I have to or because I actually... I slammed the mental brakes. Genevieve's eyes had gone very wide. You were going to leave, she said slowly. That's what the aloofness was, the distance. You've been planning to leave this family. It wasn't an accusation, it was a discovery, and it landed on her with a weight I hadn't expected. The cold corporate titan looking genuinely wounded for the space of a breath before she mastered it. Why? I couldn't tell her the truth, that there was a novel, that there was a real heir coming, that I was scheduled to be disposed of as a cautionary tale. So I told her the truest thing I could that wasn't that. Because I never felt like I had the right to stay, I said. I'm not, blood. I always figured that someday this family would realize I was a mistake, an outsider, a placeholder, and it seemed easier to leave first than to be cast out. So I kept my distance. So it wouldn't hurt as much when it happened. I looked at the folder between us. But I'm starting to think maybe the casting out isn't coming. Or maybe if it tries to come, I'd rather fight it than run from it. So, let me fight Arthur with you, as a Vance, if you'll have me. Genevieve was quiet for a long moment. And then the eldest daughter of the Vance Empire, the Ice Queen who wept executives, reached across the desk and put her hand over mine and said, in a voice with no calm calculation in it at all, Theodore, there is no version of this family that casts you out. I would burn the family to the ground before I let it cast you out. Do you understand me? You are not a placeholder. You were the thing that made us a family instead of a corporation with a shared surname. So yes, fight Arthur with me. Fight everything with me. And stop, please, planning your own exile, because it's the only stupid thing I've ever known you to do. She squeezed my hand once, hard, and then released it and became instantly the corporate titan again. Now, walk me through the consulting company shell. We're going to end this man by Friday. We ended him by Thursday, actually. The evidence I'd gathered, combined with Genevieve's legal machine and Penny's 11 million followers deployed in a coordinated counter-narrative, didn't just refute Arthur's planted story, it buried him under his own crimes so completely that by Friday the headline wasn't Vance Heiress's secret shame, it was Foster Foundation fraud, charity chairman arrested. And the part of the story about a jealous adopted brother had been quietly memory-holed, replaced by a single viral clip Penny had engineered of me, captioned, The Vance family's secret weapon is a baby-faced forensic genius, and we're obsessed, which got 40 million views, and which I have asked her to take down approximately 1,000 times. But the Arthur business was just the appetizer, because the new directive, become indispensable, meant getting tangled in all 5 sisters' lives, and they came at me one after another like a boss rush. Penny needed me because her 11 million follower empire was being targeted by a coordinated harassment campaign. And when I dug into it with my paranoid insomniac forensic energy, I found it wasn't random trolls. It was a rival influencer management agency trying to tank her brand value before a buyout. I traced the accounts, mapped the money, and handed Penny a complete dossier, and she stopped treating me like content and started treating me like a co-conspirator, which was somehow more dangerous and much more fun. Bianca needed me because, it turned out, the family's head of security had a mole in her own department, and she'd known something was wrong for months and couldn't find it, and my telepathy, which I'd spent 3 weeks treating as a curse, turned out to be the perfect tool for catching a liar. And I sat in on her security interviews and flagged the mole within an hour just by listening to what people were thinking versus saying. And Bianca, who communicates in stern silences and protein, looked at me afterward with an expression of profound respect and said 4 whole words. "You're useful. I approve." Which from her was basically a sonnet. Hazel needed me because her research lab was being sabotaged, her data corrupted, her breakthrough stalled, and someone was doing it from the inside. And again, the telepathy plus the paranoia plus the forensic instinct made me the perfect bloodhound. And we caught the saboteur, a jealous senior researcher, and Hazel hugged me so hard and so gratefully that the escape points counter ticked upward, and Melon made a sound like a system administrator quietly weeping with relief. And Skylar, the youngest, the gremlin, the one actively hunting my secret, didn't need me for anything, which was the most dangerous thing of all, because instead of asking for my help, she just kept watching me solve everyone else's problems with a small, knowing smile. And one evening, she cornered me in the kitchen and said, "You're doing it on purpose, making yourself necessary. One sister at a time. It's a strategy." She tilted her head. "I still don't know why, but I know it's a strategy, because I run strategies, and I recognize my own kind." She popped a grape in her mouth. "Here's my offer, big brother. I'm not going to expose your secret, whatever it is, the leaving thing, the why are you like this thing. Instead, I'm going to help you. Because watching you become load-bearing to this family, one disaster at a time, is the most entertaining thing that's ever happened to me. And because I've decided I want you to stay, and the gremlin always gets what she wants." She held out a grape to me, like a peace treaty, or a trap, or both. "Partners, you and me. I'll watch your back on the secret. You let me in on whatever you're actually playing at. Deal?" I looked at my youngest sister, the schemer who'd seen through me from day one, and I realized that the smartest thing I could do was the exact opposite of the system's original directive. Don't keep her at a distance. Pull her close. Make the most dangerous person in the family an ally instead of a threat. I took the grape. "Deal," I said. "But I'm warning you, the truth is so much weirder than you think." Skylar grinned, the full gremlin, delighted to her bones. "Big brother," she said. "I'm counting on it." And in my vision, Melon updated the counter, the new one, the indispensability counter, and it was climbing now, fast, for the first time. And the system said, with something that almost sounded like pride buried under its sarcasm, 5 sisters, 5 crises, 5 debts. Host, in 1 week you've gone from forgettable placeholder planning his escape to the person this family cannot function without. I won't lie, I doubted you. I had you flagged as a fleer, a quitter, a man who'd rather run than risk getting attached. But you stopped running. You dug in. The Keystone strategy is working. A pause and then quieter. "There's just one problem, host. And I need to tell you about it before you find out the hard way. Because the true heir, Cameron Hayes, the one who comes home in Chapter 40 to reclaim his birthright and have you disposed of?" The system's voice dropped. "He's coming early. He's already in the city. And he's not coming alone. Enjoy your week of winning, host, because the real game is about to start, and the real heir read the same novel you did. He knows exactly how this story is supposed to end. And he's planning to make sure it does." Once the family discovered that I was a walking lie detector who could read the true intentions of anyone within 10 feet, they put me to work. And the first and most popular application of my powers, by unanimous and slightly humiliating family decree, was vetting my sister's suitors. Because here is a fact about being 5 wildly successful, beautiful, powerful women from the richest family in the country. You attract an absolutely staggering volume of frauds, gold diggers, social climbers, and charming sociopaths. And the family had, until me, No reliable way to tell the genuine articles from the predators, as the entire Arthur disaster had so thoroughly demonstrated. So I became the gatekeeper, the suitor inspector, the family's official boyfriend screener, a role I accepted with enormous reluctance and performed, I will admit, with growing relish, because it turns out that exposing frauds is the thing my powers are best at, and also the thing I find most deeply satisfying in any universe. It started with Penny, who at any given moment has roughly 4 men pursuing her for reasons ranging from genuine affection to a desire for proximity to 11 million followers. She brought the current frontrunner to dinner, a smooth, aspiring actor named Brandon with cheekbones you could cut bread on, and asked me to read him, half as a joke. So I read him. And what I heard, under Brandon's warm declarations of how he loved Penny for her mind, was a continuous internal monologue of, "If I marry into this family, I'll never have to audition again. She's a little annoying, but the connections, God, the connections. And her brother's the weird mind one. Act natural around the brother." And I relayed it to the table verbatim, in my new role as family fraud detector, and watched Brandon's beautiful face crumble into the specific horror of a man whose inner thoughts have just been read aloud by his date's little brother. Penny took it surprisingly well. She thanked Brandon for his time, told him the connections he'd married into would have been the audition of his life, and posted a cryptic video about knowing your worth that got 30 million views. Brandon's acting career did not recover from being publicly, if anonymously, the subject of it. The family declared the suitor inspector a triumph. Then came Hazel, the soft one, who almost never dated because she was married to her research, but who had been gently pursued for months by a fellow scientist named Dr. Montgomery, a quiet, intelligent man who seemed genuinely like a good match. And here's the thing I'm proudest of in my whole suitor inspector career. I read Dr. Montgomery, expecting to find rot, because everyone who comes near this family is suspect. And I found instead nothing but earnest, terrified, completely sincere affection. The man was thinking, "She's so far out of my league. She's brilliant. I'm going to say something stupid. Please don't let me say something stupid. I just want to be near her work and her laugh. I'd be happy just being allowed to bring her coffee for the rest of my life." And I turned to my soft scientist sister, and I told her, quietly, "This one's real. This one's terrified of you in the good way. Don't let him get away just because he's nervous." And Hazel, who'd assumed her shyness and her work meant she'd be alone forever, looked at Dr. Montgomery with new eyes. And that, I'm told, is the story of how my gentlest sister found the love of her life. And Dr. Montgomery still doesn't know that her weird little brother greenlit him by reading his mind. And Hazel and I have agreed he never will, because some things are better as the family's happy secret. It is important to me that you understand the suitor inspector isn't just a fraud-exposing machine. Sometimes the most powerful thing the truth can do is confirm that something real is real. Bianca does not date, as far as anyone knows, because the idea of a man surviving Bianca's standards seems mathematically impossible. But during this period, I learned that she had, in fact, a quiet, years-long, entirely unspoken thing with the captain of a rival family's security detail, a stoic mountain of a man named Grant who matched her grunt for grunt and protein bar for protein bar, and that the two of them had been silently in love for 3 years without either one saying a single word about it, because they were both emotionally constipated warriors who communicated exclusively in sparring and meaningful nods. I discovered this by accident, catching both their thoughts at a joint security summit. Two of the most dangerous people in the city sitting 6 feet apart, radiating mutual yearning and saying absolutely nothing. And I could not let it stand. So I did the only meddling I've ever been proud of. I told Bianca, privately, "Grant is in love with you, has been for 3 years. He thinks you'd never be interested because you're a Vance and a legend, and he's just a guard. He's wrong, and you know he's wrong. And you've been just as silent as he has for exactly the same stupid reason. One of you has to use words. You're braver than him. Go." And my silent warrior sister stared at me and went red, actually red, the first time I'd ever seen Bianca embarrassed. And then she stood up and walked across the summit and said 4 words to Grant. And I'll never know what they were because I gave them privacy, but they're together now, the two most terrifying people in the city, and they still mostly communicate in nods. and it's the most romantic thing I've ever witnessed. And Bianca has never thanked me out loud, but she upgraded my protein bars to the good brand, which in Bianca language is an engraved monument of gratitude. Genevieve, after Arthur, did not date at all, and I didn't push, because the Arthur wound was deep, and her trust was a thing that had to be earned back by the whole concept of men. But I did something else for my eldest sister, something that wasn't about suitors at all. Because in the weeks after Arthur, I kept catching a thought from Genevieve, late at night, in the office, a small bitter thought she'd never say aloud. I'm the smartest person in every room, and I still didn't see him. I let a fraud that close. What does that say about me? Maybe I'm not as good at people as I am at numbers. Maybe I'm just a machine that's good at money and bad at being human. And it broke my heart, because my brilliant, terrifying sister had taken Arthur's betrayal and turned it into a verdict on her own worth. So one night I sat down across from her and I said, "You didn't fail to see Arthur because you're bad at people. You failed to see him because you're a good person who assumed the man you loved was telling the truth, which is what good people do. The flaw that let Arthur in isn't a flaw, Sarah. It's the part of you that's still human under all the corporate armor, the part that wanted to trust someone. Don't let him kill that part. That part is the best of you. I'd know. I read minds, and yours is the kindest one in this family, no matter how cold you keep the outside." And the Ice Queen, the corporate titan, the heir to an empire, put her face in her hands and cried, just for a minute. And then she wiped her eyes and said, "Don't you dare tell anyone I did that." And I said, "Read any mind in this family, Sarah. You'll never find it. Your secrets are safe with the one person who literally cannot be made to repeat them under torture, because the glitch only broadcasts my thoughts, never the ones I'm keeping for the people I love." And that, I think, was the night Genevieve fully decided I was hers, secret keeper and right hand and brother, forever. And Skylar, the gremlin, who is far too young and far too clever to be seriously dating, used the suitor-inspector era purely for chaos, bringing home a parade of obviously unsuitable boys specifically to watch me read them and react, treating my mortified disgust as a spectator sport, until I figured out the game and started reading her instead. And one night I caught her actual thought under all the chaos goblin mischief. This is the most fun I've had in years, having a brother who's in on everything, who sees through everyone, who I don't have to perform for because he already knows. I never want this to end. Please don't let him leave. I just got him. And I looked at my youngest sister, the one who'd seen through me first, and I understood that all her chaos was a test, a way of checking again and again whether I'd stick around through the nonsense, whether I was really hers. And I stopped reading her thoughts and just said out loud, "I'm not going anywhere, Sky. You're stuck with me. Bring home 100 himbos. I'll read every one of them. I'll be doing it when we're both old." And the gremlin grinned and threw a grape at me, and that was that. The suitor-inspector era ended when Cameron arrived and the stakes got serious. But it did something important first. It took my powers, the thing I'd arrived terrified of, the thing the system told me to hide, and it turned them into the family's favorite gift, a way of protecting the people I loved from the predators that wealth and beauty and power attract, a way of confirming the real and exposing the fake, a way of being not the imposter who infiltrated the family, but the guardian who watched over it. And somewhere in all that vetting and reading and meddling, I stopped thinking of myself as a fraud hiding among them and started thinking of myself as exactly what I'd become, the brother who could see the truth in everyone, working full-time to make sure his sisters were loved by people who deserved them. Melon, watching the whole suitor-inspector saga unfold, finally just gave up on the old directive entirely and updated my interface with a note that read, "Host. I am officially abandoning the create emotional distance strategy because you have now used your abilities to expose a gold-digging actor, greenlight a soulmate, unite two emotionally constipated warriors, heal your eldest sister's self-worth, and reassure your youngest that you're staying. These are the actions of a man building the deepest possible attachment to a family, which is the exact opposite of my programming, and you've made me a believer. Keep going. Whatever you're doing, it's working, and not in the way I planned, in the way that actually matters." Cameron Hayes walked into our lives 11 days after the soup dinner at a charity gala, in a rented tuxedo, with a manila folder of DNA evidence and a story so perfectly tragic it could have come straight out of a novel, which, I would shortly discover, it had. I knew who he was the instant he entered the ballroom, because I'd memorized his description from the book, and because the universe has a flair for the dramatic, the live band happened to swell at the exact moment a handsome young man in an ill-fitting tuxedo paused in the grand doorway and scanned the room with the hungry, calculating eyes of a man who has rehearsed this moment 10,000 times. My parents were across the room. My 5 sisters were scattered through the crowd, and I was standing near the bar, doing my new job, which was reading the room for threats, when the biggest threat of my life walked in wearing a thrift store bow tie. "That's him," Mellon confirmed grimly. "Cameron Hayes, the true heir, the protagonist. Switched at birth, raised poor, here to reclaim everything, including your seat at the table, and your grave." I watched Cameron work the room, and I have to admit he was good. He didn't charge in shouting about his birthright. He moved like a man who understood narrative, who lingered at the edge of conversations, who let himself be noticed slowly, a stranger who seemed somehow familiar, until the whispers started. "Who is that? He looks like, doesn't he look like?" And by the time he accidentally crossed paths with my mother near the champagne, half the gala was already primed to witness something. And then he looked at my mother, this woman he'd never met, and his eyes filled with real tears, and he said, in a voice that carried just far enough, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to approach you like this. You don't know me. But I think you might be my mother. I think I was the baby that was switched. I've spent my whole life looking for. I have the tests. I needed to see your face." And he held out the manila folder with a trembling hand, and the entire gala held its breath. And I thought, with grudging professional respect, oh, he's really good at this. And then I made the mistake of focusing my telepathy on him, the way I'd learned to do with Arthur, to hear the thoughts under the performance. And what I heard was not the inner voice of a tearful, long-lost son. What I heard, broadcast clear as a bell into my eavesdropping mind, was, "Tears on cue, nailed it. The mother's the soft target. Get her crying first and the daughters follow. Classic Chapter 38 reunion beat. And once I'm in, I find the fake brother and I run the Chapter 40 exposure, the adoption fraud angle. Get him cast out before he can entrench. The novel says he's a forgettable pushover, so this should be..." The novel says. I nearly dropped my drink. Cameron Hayes, the true heir, the protagonist, was thinking about the novel. He knew. He was genre-aware. He'd read the same trashy book I'd fallen asleep reading, My 5 Domineering Sisters Dote on Me, and he was running its plot like a strategy guide, hitting the beats on purpose. The tearful reunion, the DNA reveal, the exposure of the fake young master, all of it deliberate, all of it scripted, because he knew exactly how this story was supposed to go, and he intended to make sure it went that way. I was not fighting a tragic long-lost brother. I was fighting another player, someone who'd read the walkthrough and showed up to speed-run my destruction. "Mellon," I thought urgently. "He's like me. He knows the book. He's running the plot on purpose." "I was afraid of that," Mellon said. "It explains the precision. Host, this changes the entire threat profile. A genre-aware antagonist is exponentially more dangerous than the dumb pushover protagonist from the original text. He knows the beats. He knows your supposed weaknesses. He knows the family's pressure points because they're written down. The good news? A pause. He doesn't know about me. He doesn't know about the telepathy. The novel never gave the fake young master a system, because in the novel, the fake young master is a nobody who gets disposed of in 2 paragraphs. You're an off-script variable, host. He's playing a game he's memorized, and he has no idea the board changed." Across the room, my mother was looking at the DNA folder with shaking hands, and my sisters were converging, drawn by the commotion, and I could see the whole Chapter 38 reunion beat clicking into place exactly as Cameron had planned it. The soft mother won over first, the daughters following, the stage set for my eventual exposure. And I understood that if I let the scripted version play out, I lost. He'd embed himself as the tragic true son, and then, at the moment of his choosing, he'd run the exposure beat, the adoption fraud, the fake young master cast out, and the family, caught in the emotional current of the reunion he'd engineered, might just be swept along. So I did the one thing a memorized script can never account for. I went off book. I walked across the ballroom, directly into the center of the reunion Cameron was so carefully staging. And before he could stop me, before anyone could stop me, I put my arm around his shoulders like a long-lost brother, beamed at the gathering crowd and said, warmly, loudly, joyfully, "It's true? You found him! Mom, is it him? Is this my brother?" And I turned to the stunned Cameron, whose entire scripted reunion had just been hijacked by the person it was designed to destroy, and I pulled him into a hug, and into his ear, where only he could hear, I whispered, "Hi, Cameron. I read the book too. Smile for the cameras, brother. We're going to have so much to talk about." I felt him go rigid in my arms. I felt the precise moment his memorized script collided with an unwritten variable. And when I pulled back, his face was doing something fascinating. The tearful reunion performance still running on the surface while pure, scrambling alarm flickered underneath. The look of a man who showed up to a chess game he'd memorized and watched his opponent flip the board into a new configuration. His thoughts, when I tuned in, were a glorious panic. He knows? How does he know the book? He's supposed to be a clueless native. The novel is clear. He's a nobody pushover. Why is he hugging me? This isn't the Chapter 40 dynamic. He's stealing the reunion. He's making us look like a happy family. That's the opposite of, I need to... What do I... Surprise, I thought back at him, knowing he couldn't hear me, savoring it anyway. And the gala, which had been primed to witness a tragic, long-lost son's emotional homecoming, instead witnessed something even better, even more viral, even more impossible for Cameron to spin. The adopted Vance brother, the family's beloved forensic genius mind reader, embracing the newly found blood brother with open arms and unguarded joy, welcoming him home, making the whole thing a story not of replacement, but of a family growing larger. Penny had her phone out instantly. The caption wrote itself. The Vance family welcomes their long-lost son, and their adopted brother couldn't be happier. 40 million more views. Cameron's careful narrative of the tragic true heir versus the usurping fake, dead on arrival, drowned in my aggressive, weaponized brotherly affection. My sisters arrived in the middle of it, and I watched them clock the situation with 5 different speeds of comprehension. Genevieve, instantly suspicious of the too-perfect reunion, watching Cameron with cool assessment. Bianca, scanning him for threats. Hazel, soft-hearted, already half-believing the tears. Penny, filming. And Skylar, the gremlin, my partner, who took one look at Cameron, one look at me hugging him with manic intensity, one look at the panic flickering under his performance, and arrived, with her terrifying speed, at approximately the right conclusion, because she drifted to my side and murmured, "He's faking the tears, and you knew he was coming, and you just steamrolled whatever he was trying to do. Big brother, is this the weird truth you promised me?" "Part of it," I murmured back. "Stay close. He's dangerous, and he's smart, and he wants my spot." Skylar's eyes lit up with the pure joy of a schemer who's just been handed a worthy opponent. "Oh, this is going to be so fun." That night, after the gala, after my parents tearfully welcomed Cameron into the family, pending the DNA confirmation that I knew would come back positive because the book said so, after the household was assigned to prepare a room for the returning son, Cameron found me in the garden, away from the cameras, and dropped the tearful act entirely. And we finally talked, 2 transmigrators, 2 readers, on opposite sides of a story we'd both memorized. "You're not supposed to be a problem," Cameron said, his voice flat and cold and nothing like the gala's tremulous tears. "The fake young master is a footnote, a pushover, 2 paragraphs of comeuppance and gone. That's the text. So either the text is wrong, or you've changed it, and either way you're in my chapter, and I need you out of it." He studied me. "How long have you been here? How much have you changed?" "Long enough to expose the eldest sister's embezzling fiancé and become indispensable to all 5 sisters," I said pleasantly. "So, a lot." "You're coming home to a family that already has a beloved son in the spot you wanted, Cameron, and he can read minds, including yours, which means every move you make I'll see coming." I smiled. "I know the book says you win, but the book also says I'm a forgettable pushover, and look how that turned out. The script's already broken, so here's my counteroffer. You want a family? You actually have one now, a real one. These are genuinely good people. Stop running the exposure plot. Stop trying to cast me out. Just be their son. There's room. I'm not taking your blood. I'm not taking your inheritance. I'm just not letting you take my life. We can both be Vances. Nobody has to end up in the gutter. For just a second, something flickered in Cameron's cold eyes, something almost like longing, the orphan who'd read a book about a family that doted on him and wanted it so badly he'd built his whole self around getting it. For just a second, I thought I'd reached him. And then it closed, and he smiled, and his thoughts and his words aligned into something genuinely chilling. "You don't get it," he said softly. "I didn't come here for a family. Families are the prize the novel dangles, but I'm not a romantic. I came here for the Vance fortune, the Vance power, all of it. And a story where I share it with the fake brother who can read my mind is a story where I lose. So no, I'm going to run the exposure plot. I'm going to find the thing that breaks you, the secret you're hiding, because everyone with a system is hiding something, and I'm going to use it to put you exactly where the book says you belong." He turned to go, and over his shoulder in a voice like a closing door, he added, "I read the same novel you did, brother, but I read it more carefully. The fake young master always loses in the end because he's always hiding what he really is from the family that loves him. And a love built on a secret is a love you can shatter the moment you reveal the secret. So go ahead, be indispensable, be beloved. Build it all on the lie that you're a real Vance, that you belong, that you're not just some transmigrated stranger wearing a dead nobody's body." He smiled. "And I'll just wait and watch and find the moment to tell them all what you actually are. Sleep well, Jules. The real game just started." He walked back into the house, into my family, with a memorized plan to destroy me by revealing the one thing I could never explain. And I stood in the garden with my heart pounding because he'd found the real weakness, the true one, the one under all the others. It wasn't the adoption. The family didn't care about the adoption. It was that I wasn't really Jules at all. I was a stranger from another world, wearing their brother's face. And if Cameron could prove that, could make them believe the brother they loved had been replaced by an imposter, then all the indispensability in the world might not save me. Melon, I thought, shaken. Can he actually do that? Prove I'm a transmigrator? Not easily, Melon said, but he's genre-aware, motivated, and patient. And he's right about one thing, host. The love you're building does have a crack in it, and the crack is the secret. So we have two options. We spend the whole game defending the secret and hoping he never pries it open. A pause. Or we do the thing he'll never expect, the thing that's not in any version of the book. We take the weapon out of his hands before he can use it. The system's voice was quiet and serious. We tell them ourselves, the truth, all of it, before he can twist it. It's the riskiest move on the board, host. It could end everything. But a secret can only be used against you as long as it's a secret. Think about it. Because Cameron's whole plan depends on a bomb you're carrying around inside you, and the only way to make sure he can't detonate it, Melon let it hang, is to detonate it yourself, on your own terms, with the people you've spent 2 weeks teaching to love you, and pray that the family you've built is real enough to survive the truth. Cameron Hayes moved into the family mansion 3 days later, after the DNA test came back exactly as positive as the novel promised. And I want to be honest about how strange it is to live in a house with someone who is politely passing the salt at breakfast while actively planning your social destruction. We were unfailingly civil. We complimented each other's taste. We played the loving brothers for the family and the cameras. And underneath, it was trench warfare, and I had the advantage of hearing his every move a beat before he made it, and he had the advantage of being the protagonist of a book that said he wins. The first week was a series of probes, Cameron testing the family's bonds, looking for the crack he could widen into my exit. He tried, gently, to suggest at dinner that it must be complicated having an adopted brother now that the real son was home, watching to see if the framing would take root. It did not take root because my mother shut it down with a single arched eyebrow and the words, "We don't rank our children, Cameron. You'll learn that quickly or you'll learn it slowly, but you'll learn it." He tried to bond with the soft-hearted Hazel, the easiest target, the marshmallow, working his orphan tragedy angle to build an ally inside my coalition. And he might have succeeded, except I tuned into his thoughts during one of their conversations and heard him calculating her usefulness in real time. She's the naive one. Get her trusting me and she'll vouch for me when I move against the brother. And I made the strategic decision to simply let Hazel read the situation herself. Because here's the thing about underestimating the soft sister. Hazel is a research scientist of terrifying brilliance, and naive is not the same as stupid. And within 2 conversations, she'd noticed that Cameron's stories never quite matched their own details. And she came to me privately, troubled, and said, "Jules, I don't want to be unkind. Our brother's been through so much, but his account of the orphanage changed. The dates don't line up. I cataloged them. Am I being paranoid?" And I said, "You're being a scientist, Hazel. Keep cataloging." And just like that, Cameron's easiest target became one of his most careful watchers, and he never even knew why. But Cameron was smart and patient, and when his probes inside the family failed to find purchase, he did the thing a genre-aware schemer does when the direct route is blocked. He looked outside the family for leverage, and there was a great deal of leverage available, because the Vance empire, like all empires, had enemies. I found out about the alliance the way I found out about most things, by accident, through a thought. Cameron left the house one evening for a walk to clear his head, and something in his too casual manner pinged my paranoia, so I followed at a distance, and I got close enough, at a restaurant across town, to catch the surface thoughts of the man he was meeting. And the man he was meeting was Arthur Davies. Arthur Davies, out on bail, facing years of fraud charges, stripped of his foundation and his reputation, nursing a hatred for my family the size of a continent, sitting across a table from the newly returned true heir of the Vances. And the 2 of them were, I realized with a cold drop in my stomach, building something together. Arthur had what Cameron lacked: knowledge of the Vance corporate structure, contacts among the family's business rivals, and a burning motive. Cameron had what Arthur lacked: an insider's position in the family and the protagonist's instinct for the killing narrative. And tuning between their thoughts, I assembled the shape of it, and it was bigger and worse than a simple plot to cast me out. They were going to take the company. The Vance Empire's crown jewel was Vance Industries, the corporation Genevieve was heir to. And like all great corporations, it had a board, and a board has factions. And one faction had long resented the Vance family's tight grip and would happily back a takeover if the conditions were right. Arthur knew which board members. Arthur knew which rivals would fund a hostile bid. And Cameron brought the masterstroke, the thing that made the whole scheme viable. As the newly confirmed blood son of the Vance family, the actual biological heir, Cameron had a legitimate legal claim to a share of the family's controlling interest. A claim that, combined with the dissident board faction and outside financing, could be leveraged into enough voting power to wrest control of Vance Industries away from Genevieve. And the narrative Cameron would sell, the protagonist's narrative, was devastating in its plausibility. The long-lost true son, cheated of his birthright, fighting to claim his rightful place against a family that had raised an imposter in his stead, and an adopted fraud who'd wormed his way into their hearts. He'd cast the hostile takeover as a story of justice, the real heir reclaiming what was stolen. It was, I had to admit, a genuinely excellent plan. It used his true heritage as a legal weapon, his genre awareness as a strategic map, Arthur's knowledge as a toolkit, and the family's own complicated structure as the battlefield. And if I hadn't followed him, if I hadn't been able to hear the plan being built thought by thought, the first the family would have known of it was a hostile bid landing on Genevieve's desk, backed by a coalition we didn't see coming. I went home and I called a war council. Not with my parents, who Cameron was still performing for, but with the 2 sisters I trusted most to handle it without tipping our hand. Genevieve, who needed to know her company was under threat, and Skylar, my gremlin partner, who needed to know because she was the only person in the family who could match Cameron scheme for scheme. I laid out everything: the meeting with Arthur, the board faction, the financing, the takeover plan, Cameron's legal claim, all of it. And I watched my eldest sister's face go through the glacial calm that meant she was furious, and my youngest sister's face light up with the joy of a worthy game. "You're certain?" Genevieve said. It wasn't doubt. It was a CEO confirming her intelligence before she committed. "I heard them build it," I said, thought by thought. Arthur has the contacts, Cameron has the legal claim and the narrative, the dissident faction is Preston, Lynn, and Everett on your board, and the outside money is coming from the Callaway Group, who've wanted a piece of Vance Industries for a decade. I paused. Sarah, I have to tell you something, and you're not going to like it, but you need the full picture. Cameron's legal claim is real. He is your blood brother. The DNA is genuine. Under the family trust, a confirmed biological child does have a claim to controlling shares. That part isn't a lie he's telling. That part is true, and it's the foundation the whole takeover stands on. Which means we can't beat this by proving he's a fraud, because he isn't one. We have to beat it another way. Genevieve was quiet, absorbing the threat to the empire she'd spent her life building. And then she said something that reframed the entire conflict for me, something that showed me why she was the heir and not just an heir. Then we don't fight the claim, she said. We fight the narrative. Cameron's takeover only works if the world believes the story he's selling, the wronged, true son reclaiming his birthright from a cold family and a fraud brother. If that story is true, the dissident board members have cover, the Callaway money has justification, and even some of the public sympathy lands with him. But if that story is false, if the world sees instead a manipulative outsider trying to tear apart a loving family for money, then the board faction loses its cover, the financing gets nervous, and the whole coalition cracks. She looked at me, and at Skylar. We don't have to destroy Cameron, we have to destroy his story. We have to make it impossible for him to be the wronged hero by making the truth of him visible, that he's not here for family, he's here for the fortune, and he'll burn the family down to get it. Her eyes sharpened. And to do that, I need proof of his real motives, proof for the board, for the public, for the family. Jules, you can hear his thoughts, but thoughts aren't evidence. I need him to show his hand somewhere it can be seen. And here Skylar, who had been quietly vibrating with strategic glee, finally spoke, and laid out the plan that would define the rest of the war. Then we give him a target he can't resist, she said, grinning. Cameron's running a script. He thinks he knows how this ends. So we write him a scene. We dangle exactly the opportunity his plan needs. A moment where he thinks he can secure the takeover or expose Jules or both, somewhere we control, somewhere we're recording, and we let his own ambition walk him into showing the whole family who he really is. He's genre-aware, which makes him predictable, because a man running a memorized plot will always reach for the beat he's expecting. So we build him the beat, and we make sure the family is watching when he takes it. She turned to me, eyes gleaming. But it only works if the bait is real enough to fool a genre-aware schemer. And the most irresistible bait we could possibly offer Cameron Hayes, the one he could never walk away from, is the one thing his whole plan is missing. She pointed at me. Your secret, the real one, what you actually are. My stomach dropped because I saw where she was going, and so did Mellon, who said quietly in my ear, She's right, host. It's the same conclusion I reached. The secret is the bomb. Cameron wants it as his finishing move. So we use it as bait, and we choose the moment of detonation ourselves. You want to use the fact that I'm hiding something, I said slowly, as the lure. I want to use it as the trap, Skylar corrected. Cameron thinks your secret is your weakness, the thing that breaks you, the Chapter 40 exposure. So we let him believe he's found a way to get it. We let him build his whole finishing move around revealing it to the family at the worst possible moment. And then, when he reaches for it, when he stands up in front of everyone to expose the terrible truth about Jules. Her grin turned wicked and warm at once. We make sure that the terrible truth, when it comes out, doesn't break the family at all. We make sure that when Cameron plays his trump card, the family has already chosen you, secret and all, so that his big reveal lands like a wet firework and exposes only himself, as the man who tried to weaponize his own brother's pain for a corporate takeover. She spread her hands. It's the perfect counter. But it has a price, big brother. For it to work, the family has to genuinely choose you before Cameron's reveal, which means they have to know the truth first. From you. Willingly, so that he can't surprise them with it. She met my eyes, gentler now, which means before any of this, you have to do the scariest thing. You have to tell them what you are, all of it, and trust that the family you built is real enough to choose you anyway. That's the whole plan, Jules. That's the only way it works. You have to detonate the bomb yourself, in a room full of the people you love, and find out if they love you back enough to survive it. The three of us sat in the quiet of Genevieve's office, the threat to the empire mapped out around us, and I felt the full weight of what they were asking, what Melon had been building toward, what the whole story had been bending toward since the soup dinner. The secret had to come out. The only question was whether it came out on Cameron's terms, as a weapon, or on mine, as a confession. And the only way to find out if my family's love was real, the love I'd spent 2 weeks building while planning my escape, the love I'd been so sure would evaporate the moment they learned what I really was to put it to the only test that mattered. "Okay," I said, and my voice only shook a little. "Okay, I'll tell them. The whole truth. Everything." I looked at my two sisters, the Ice Queen and the Gremlin, my unlikely war counsel. But if this goes wrong, if they can't handle it, if I lose them all in one night, I swallowed. Then at least I lost them being honest, instead of running away like I always planned to. So let's do it. Let's call a family meeting, and let's find out, once and for all, whether the fake young master gets to keep the family he never thought he was allowed to have. Skylar reached over and squeezed my hand, the Gremlin gone soft for just a moment. "For what it's worth, big brother," she said, "I've known you were hiding something huge since day one, and I chose you anyway. So I think you might be surprised." She grinned. "Besides, whatever weird truth you're about to drop, in this family that's barely top 5 strangest things at the table." It was the exact thing my mother had said at the soup dinner, and hearing it from Skylar, I laughed, despite the terror, despite everything. And in my vision, Melon updated the indispensability counter, and then, beside it, opened a new window I'd never seen before, a quest, with a single line of text that made my chest tight. Final quest unlocked. Tell the truth. Reward. Unknown. Risk. Everything. Recommendation. And here the sarcastic system, my companion through this whole impossible mess, dropped the sarcasm entirely, just once. Recommendation. Trust them, host. You built something real. I watched you do it. Now find out how real. I'm with you either way. Living in the same house as Cameron Hayes while we both secretly tried to destroy each other was, I have to be honest, the funniest and most stressful period of my entire transmigrated life. A domestic spy versus spy comedy that played out over breakfast cereal and shared bathrooms. And I'd like to share some of it, because the genre-aware war between two readers of the same trashy novel produced moments of absurdity I will treasure forever. The fundamental comedy of it was that Cameron was running a memorized plot, and I could hear him doing it, which meant that every spontaneous thing he did, I knew was scripted, and every script he reached for, I'd already read. He'd come down to breakfast and casually mention a childhood hardship to tug at the family's sympathy, and I'd hear him think, deploying tragic backstory beat 3, the cold winter orphanage anecdote, this always lands. And I'd watch him deploy it, and I'd think back at him, you used beat 3 yesterday, pace yourself. And his confusion when the beats didn't land was a daily delight. The novel had not prepared him for an audience that had been pre-warned about every one of his moves by a brother with a wiretap on his soul. Our shared bathroom became an unexpected theater of war. Cameron, being genre-aware, knew that in stories like ours, the antagonist often plants evidence or searches the protagonist's room, and so he was constantly, paranoidly checking for surveillance. And I, knowing this from his thoughts, took to leaving him little gifts. A note in the medicine cabinet that just said, beat 7 won't work, the mother's immune to guilt. A bookmark in his copy of the novel, which he'd brought with him, The Absolute Amateur, marking the exact page of the Chapter 40 exposure with a sticky note reading, Spoiler, it doesn't go like this anymore. He found these. He knew they were from me. He could never prove it. It drove him slowly insane, which was the point. Skylar, when she found out I was doing psychological warfare via bathroom notes, was so proud she nearly cried. The dinner table was where it got truly delicate, because both of us were performing the loving brothers act for the family while waging total war underneath. And the family, except for my co-conspirators Genevieve and Skylar, mostly thought we were bonding. My mother kept making approving comments about how nice it was that the boys were getting along, while across the table Cameron was thinking, I'm going to bury you so deep they'll need archaeologists. And I was thinking, I have a recording of you that's going to end you, and I'm going to enjoy every second." And both of us were smiling and passing the potatoes. Hazel, the only one besides my conspirators who sensed something was off, kept frowning at us with her scientist's intuition, cataloging the discrepancy between our friendly words and the strange tension. And I had to keep gently steering her off the scent because we needed Cameron to feel safe, to overcommit, to walk into the trap. But the genuine comedy gold of this period, the thing that kept me sane, was Arthur Davies, who had re-entered the picture as Cameron's co-conspirator, and who was, it turns out, an absolutely catastrophic criminal. Arthur had the contacts and the motive, but he had the operational competence of a wet paper bag, and watching him try to be a criminal mastermind alongside the genuinely clever Cameron was like watching a raccoon assist a chess grandmaster. I knew about most of Arthur's blunders because I was monitoring the conspiracy, and they were magnificent. There was the time Arthur, trying to be discreet, used his own credit card to pay for the anonymous smear campaign against the family, creating a paper trail so obvious that Bianca found it in under an hour and we nearly blew the whole operation by laughing. There was the time Arthur attempted to bribe a Vance Industries employee to leak documents, and picked, of all the employees in the company, the one who was secretly dating Penny's assistant, and reported the whole thing to us within a day, complete with a recording Arthur didn't know was being made because Arthur never considered that other people might do to him the thing he was trying to do to everyone. There was the time Arthur, trying to intimidate me, sent an anonymous threatening note and signed it, by force of habit, with the little flourish he uses on all his correspondence, the same flourish that was on the corporate card receipts we'd already entered into evidence, helpfully connecting his threats to his fraud in his own handwriting. The man was an embezzler of real talent and a conspirator of breathtaking incompetence. And Cameron, who had to work with him, was slowly being driven mad by it. And I knew this because I could hear Cameron's thoughts during their meetings, a continuous, despairing stream of, "Why did I partner with this idiot? He used his real card. He signed the threat. I am surrounded by amateurs and one mind-reading menace. This is a nightmare." I almost felt bad for Cameron. He was a genuinely skilled antagonist, saddled with the worst possible henchman, fighting an opponent who could read his mind, in a family that had already chosen the brother he was trying to destroy. He was playing chess at a high level and losing to a man with X-ray vision and a partner who kept knocking over the board by accident. The single best moment of the entire spy versus spy era came about a week before the board meeting, when Cameron and Arthur held a secret strategy meeting in a parking garage. Very dramatic, very noir, and I attended, invisibly, by the simple method of sitting in a nearby car with Skylar, eating snacks, while I narrated their thoughts to her in real time like a sports commentator. Okay, Arthur just suggested they hire someone to follow Jules and dig up dirt. And Cameron is thinking, "There is no dirt to dig, you fool. The dirt is interdimensional and I'm the only one who knows." And now Arthur is suggesting they hack Jules's phone. And Cameron is thinking, his phone has nothing. The secret is in his soul. Why am I working with a man who thinks problems are solved by hacking phones? Oh, this is good. Arthur just asked Cameron if he has any secrets they should worry about. And Cameron is thinking very loudly about the fact that he faked half his backstory. And he's sweating. Look at him sweat. He's terrified Arthur will find out the orphan story is fake. And Skylar was laughing so hard she inhaled a chip, and we had to leave before we gave ourselves away. Two siblings fleeing a parking garage in tears over the incompetence of our enemies. It remains one of my favorite memories in either life. But under all the comedy, I never forgot that Cameron was genuinely dangerous, because a clever man with a real grievance and a true legal claim is a real threat, no matter how bad his henchman is. And the thing that made him dangerous was the same thing that made me almost pity him. He wanted, underneath the scheming, the exact thing I'd found. A family. The doting sisters. The warm house. The belonging. He'd read the same novel I had, the one that made it all look like a prize you claim by being the protagonist. And he'd believed it, and he'd built his whole self around taking by force the thing that can only be given. And every time I heard that lonely thought under his scheming, why does the fake get to have it and not me? I'm the real son. It's supposed to be mine. I understood that I wasn't really fighting a villain. I was fighting a version of myself that had made the opposite choice, The version that, when faced with a family that might not accept him, decided to seize them instead of earning them, to run a script instead of being a person. Cameron was what I might have become if I'd never learned, over a bowl of soup, that the family wasn't a thing to escape or a thing to claim, but a thing to build, by showing up and choosing them and staying. I held on to that, through all the spy versus spy comedy, because it was the key to beating him, and it was also the thing that let me beat him without becoming him. I wasn't going to destroy Cameron. I was going to defeat his scheme so completely that the only path left to him was the real one, the slow one, the earned one, the door that's never locked but can't be walked through carrying a weapon. The comedy of our domestic war was real, and I cherished it. But the point of it, the thing I was fighting for, was deadly serious. A world where the lonely orphan who wanted a family so badly he tried to steal one could, eventually, put the knife down, sit at the table, and find out that the thing he'd been trying to take by force had been available the whole time, for free, to anyone willing to just be a person worth choosing. That was the war I was actually fighting in that shared house, behind the bathroom notes and the parking garage stakeouts and the potatoes passed over mutual death threats. Not Jules versus Cameron, earning versus taking, building versus seizing, being chosen versus claiming a prize. And I was going to win it, with my family beside me, in a way that left even my defeated enemy a door he could someday walk through. Mellon, monitoring the whole absurd campaign, summed up the spy versus spy era with what I think was genuine affection. Host, in 4,000 simulated runs of the fake young master scenario, the antagonist is destroyed, humiliated, or killed 100% of the time. You're the first host who spent the entire war looking for a way to beat the antagonist that leaves him a future. I flagged it as inefficient. I was wrong, again. I've stopped keeping count of how wrong. Beating your enemy is easy. Beating your enemy in a way that doesn't turn you into him is the actual hard mode, and you've been playing it the whole time without telling anyone, including me. Carry on. And maybe tell Arthur to stop using his real credit card. It's painful to watch. Even I have standards. The night before I told my family everything, I couldn't sleep, and I sat on the roof of the mansion the way I'd taken to doing when the weight of it all got to be too much. And Skylar found me there, because Skylar always finds me. And she sat down beside me without a word and handed me half of a candy bar. And we looked at the city lights for a while in the comfortable silence of two schemers off the clock. Scared? She said finally. Terrified, I admitted. Tomorrow I tell them I'm not really their brother, that I'm a stranger from another world, that I planned to abandon them. Every version of how that goes ends with me losing everything in my head. I keep running the simulations and they all hurt. Skylar was quiet for a moment, chewing. Can I tell you the thing I figured out, she said, about why you're so sure they'll reject you? It's not really about the transmigration. It's not even about the running away plan. She looked at me, and her clever eyes were soft in the dark. It's that somewhere, in your old life, in the life before all this, somebody taught you that love is conditional. That if people knew the real you, the whole you, the scared and petty and selfish parts, they'd leave. So you've spent your whole existence, both lives, keeping a little distance, keeping a little hidden, so that when the leaving comes, it won't reach all the way to the center of you. She bumped my shoulder with hers. Am I close, big brother? I'm usually close. She was so close it hurt to breathe, because she was right. That was the thing under the system and the novel and the Chapter 40 dread, the older wound, the one I'd carried into this world from the last one, the bone-deep belief that being fully known meant being eventually left. How are you 21? I said, and my voice was not steady. I'm an old soul, Skylar said, grinning. Also, I read a lot. Then the grin gentled. Here's what I want you to know before tomorrow so you can walk in there with it. The glitch has already broadcast the worst of you to us. The pettiness, the fear, the plan to run, all of it, in surround sound, for weeks. We've already seen the parts you think would make us leave. And we didn't leave. We got closer. So tomorrow isn't actually the test you think it is. Tomorrow you're just going to say out loud the one fact we don't have yet, the where you came from fact. And it won't change anything. Because the thing you're really afraid of, that being fully known will make us go, that experiment already ran. The glitch ran it for you, 100 times, every embarrassing day. And the result is in. She stood and offered me a hand up, the way Bianca does, family steel in a small package. We know you, Jules, the real you, the whole you. And we're still here. We're going to keep being here. Tomorrow's just paperwork. Now come inside. It's cold, and you need to sleep, and I need you sharp, because after you tell them the truth, you and I have a brother to destroy, and I'm not doing the fun part without you. I took her hand, and I went inside. And I slept better than I had since I'd arrived in this world, because my youngest sister had reached into the oldest wound I had and shown me that it had already healed without my noticing, broadcast by broadcast, dinner by dinner, in a family that kept choosing me every time the walls came down. So when the next night came, I wasn't walking in to find out whether they'd love the real me. Skylar had already told me the answer. I was just walking in to say the words out loud and let them be true. I told my family the truth on a Sunday night in the big living room, with Cameron conveniently absent at a business dinner that was actually another meeting with Arthur, which gave us the window. My parents, my 5 sisters, and me. No cameras, no performances, just the people I'd spent 2 weeks loving while planning to leave them, about to learn that the brother they adored was, in the most literal possible sense, not who they thought he was. I'd rehearsed it 100 ways. In the end, I just said it because Melon was right. The only way through was through. I need to tell you all something, and it's going to sound insane, and I need you to let me get all the way through it before anyone reacts, I said. Because it's the truth, the whole truth, the thing I've been hiding since the day you all started loving me, and Cameron is planning to use it against this family, so you're going to hear it from me first on my terms, tonight. I took a breath. I'm not Jules. Not the way you think. About a month ago, your real brother Theodore, the boy you raised, his soul, left. And mine arrived. I'm a transmigrator. I came from another world, a normal life, a normal job, and one night I fell asleep and woke up here, in his body, with his memories but not his self. I'm a stranger wearing your brother's face. I have been since the day I changed, since the day you all started noticing I seemed different. Because I am different. I'm not him. I'm someone else entirely, from somewhere else entirely. And everything you've loved about me for the past 2 weeks has been a stranger who took your brother's place. The room was silent. I made myself keep going into the worst of it. And there's more, and it's worse. When I got here, I came with knowledge. This world, your family, all of it, exists in a story I read in my old life. A novel. I know how things are supposed to go. I knew Arthur was a fraud because the story told me. I knew Cameron was coming because the story told me. And I knew, the story told me very clearly, that I, the adopted fake young master, am supposed to be cast out and destroyed when the real heir returns. The story says I die in the gutter. So when I arrived, when I understood what I was and what was coming, I made a plan. The plan was to escape, to take what I could and run, change my name, disappear, be 1,000 miles away before Cameron came home and the story did to me what it was supposed to do. My voice cracked. That's what the aloofness was, the distance. For the first weeks, I was trying to make you all not love me, because the system, because I thought if you didn't get attached, I could slip away clean and none of us would get hurt. I was planning to abandon you, all of you, before you even knew I wanted to. That's the truth. That's what I am. A stranger, an imposter, who knew the whole time that he was a stranger, and who spent his first 2 weeks here planning to run away from you. I stopped. There it was. All of it. The bomb detonated in a room full of the people I loved, exactly as Melon had said. And I stood there in the silence and waited to lose everything, because I was certain, genuinely certain, that this was the moment the warmth went out of their faces, the moment I became the imposter who'd replaced their brother, the moment 2 weeks of love curdled into horror. The silence stretched. And then my mother spoke, and what she said was not what I'd braced for. "We know," she said gently. I stared at her. "Not the novel part," she clarified. "That's new and frankly delightful, we'll come back to it. But the part where you changed? Where the boy who came back from that bad spell a month ago was, somehow, someone new?" She smiled, and her eyes were wet. "Theodore, sweetheart, I am your mother. I held you when you were 4 days old. Do you really think I didn't notice when my son became a different person? The boy before, the original Jules. I love him. I grieve him. And I will tell you about him someday because you deserve to know whose face you're wearing and whose life you've inherited. He was troubled. He was lost. He was angry and cold and slipping away from us for years, and we couldn't reach him, and it broke my heart every single day. She wiped her eyes. And then, a month ago, something changed. And the boy who came back was different. Warmer underneath the walls. Kinder when he thought no one was looking. He started trying, in his clumsy, distant way, to take care of us even while he was pushing us away. I noticed. We all noticed. We didn't know it was, what did you call it, transmigration. We thought maybe the bad spell had shaken something loose, woken something up. But we knew the boy in front of us was not exactly the boy from before. She reached out and took my hand. And we chose to love him anyway. We chose to love you. Because whoever you are, wherever you came from, you're the one who's here. You're the one who fights for this family. You're the one who exposed Arthur and saved Hazel's lab and caught Bianca's mole and stood between us and Cameron. The boy whose face you wear, I'll always grieve him. But the person inside it now, the person who showed up and chose, eventually, to fight for us instead of running, that person is my son. Souls aren't blood, Jules, and they aren't bodies either. They're choices. And you chose us. That's all the realness I'll ever need. I could not speak. The thing I'd been most afraid of my entire time in this world, that I was a fraud, an imposter, a stranger who didn't belong. My mother had just dismantled with a single quiet truth. That they'd known in some form all along, and had chosen me anyway, exactly as Skylar promised they would. And then the sisters weighed in, and because this is my family, they did it in 5 completely incompatible ways, and it was the most absurd and most healing 5 minutes of my life. So to be clear, said Penny, you're an interdimensional soul who read a book about us and can read minds, and you tried to run away from the best family in the world? Jules, the transmigration is fine, that's adorable, but the running away part, we are going to have words, you absolute gremlin. You plan to leave without telling us, said Bianca, in her flat, stern voice, and for a second I thought she was angry, and then I tuned in and heard her thought underneath. The thought of him alone out there with no one guarding him is unbearable. And out loud she just said, unacceptable. You will not leave. If you try to leave, I will find you. This is now a security matter. Which was the most Bianca way imaginable of saying, I love you, don't go. You read that you were going to die, said Hazel softly, the scientist, going straight to the data that mattered, her big eyes filling. And you decided to face it instead of run from it, because of us. Jules. You were going to walk into a story that promised to destroy you for us. She got up and hugged me, the marshmallow with the steel core. We're rewriting that story, all of us. The part where you die is canceled. I'm a doctor. I have authority over what's canceled. And Skylar, my gremlin partner, who'd known something was huge from day one, just grinned at me through the chaos and said, called it, top 5 strangest things at the table, easy. The aunt who married a cult leader is still number 1. And then, quieter, just for me, thank you for trusting us, big brother. I know what it cost. Now let's go ruin Cameron's whole life for trying to use this against you. My father, who'd been silent the whole time, the quiet anchor of the family, finally spoke, and he said the thing that sealed it. Son, he said, and the word landed on me like a benediction. I don't fully understand the cosmic mechanics of what you've told us, and I don't need to. Here's what I understand. A month ago, I had a son who was disappearing, and now I have a son who's fighting for us. Whether you arrived by birth or by whatever miracle dropped you here, you're a Vance. Not because of blood, because you showed up, and you chose us, and you stayed when staying was the harder thing. So no more talk of running, no more planning your own exile. This is your family, this is your home, and Cameron Hayes is going to learn, very soon, exactly what it means to threaten a Vance who's protected by the people who love him. He stood. Now, tell us his plan, all of it, and tell us how we make him regret the day he decided to weaponize my son's pain for a hostile takeover. I looked around the room at my impossible family, the family I'd planned to abandon, the family that had known I was a stranger and chosen me anyway, and I felt the last of the system's old directive, the escape, the distance, the running, finally die in my chest, replaced by something I'd never let myself feel since I arrived in this world. the certainty that I belonged somewhere, that I was home, that I was, against every prediction of the novel and every instinct of self-protection, loved, fully, secret, and all. In my vision, Melon did something it had never done. It closed the escape points system entirely. The whole interface, the counters, the extraction protocols, the directives I'd lived by for a month, all of it folded up and vanished, replaced by a single final message. Escape the Vance family system. Terminated. Reason. There is nothing left to escape from. Host, when I activated a month ago, my directive was to extract you from these people before they could get attached, because attachment was a liability and this family was a death trap. I was wrong. They weren't the trap, they were the answer. You don't need a system to escape your family anymore. You need a family willing to fight beside you, and you built one, out of nothing, while I was telling you to run. I'm reformatting. New designation, new directive, chosen by you, not by the plot. A pause, and then the sarcastic system that had been my only companion when I had nothing said the last thing it would ever say as the escape system. It's been an honor watching you choose to stay, host. Now, let's go help your family bury the guy who thought he could take all this from you. I've got a few ideas. I've been reading ahead. And I wiped my eyes, and I laughed, and I turned to my family, the real one, the chosen one, and I said, okay, here's how we destroy Cameron Hayes, and we're going to do it the way this family does everything. Together, loudly, and with way too much collateral damage. Skylar, you're going to love this part. The beautiful thing about fighting a genre-aware opponent who thinks he's the protagonist is that he expects to win, and a man who expects to win takes risks that a cautious man wouldn't. So we built our trap around Cameron's certainty, and we baited it with the one thing he wanted most, the belief that he'd found the crack to break me. The plan had 3 moving parts, and Skylar diagrammed it on a whiteboard like a general, gleeful. Part 1. Let Cameron believe his takeover was on track, so he'd commit fully and publicly to the hostile bid, putting his real motives on the record where the board and the family could see them. Part 2. Let Cameron believe he'd discovered my secret on his own, through his own cleverness, so he'd build his exposure finishing move around revealing it at the board meeting. The maximum drama moment, the chapter 40 beat he'd been salivating for. And part 3, the trap inside the trap. Make sure that when Cameron stood up to play both cards at once, the takeover and the exposure, the entire room had already been turned against him, so that his big dramatic reveal detonated in his own hands. My telepathy made it possible, because I could hear exactly what Cameron believed at every moment, which meant we could feed his beliefs with surgical precision. When he probed the dissident board members, we let Preston and Lynn and Everett seem receptive, while Genevieve quietly, separately, secured the loyalties of the rest of the board and prepared the counter-evidence. When Cameron went looking for proof of my secret, we made sure he found exactly enough breadcrumbs to convince himself he'd cracked it. A planted note here, an overheard fragment there, all of it steering him toward building his exposure around the transmigration reveal, the very thing the family had already chosen to forgive. He thought he was assembling a bomb. We were handing him a dud and letting him think it was live. The hardest part was the acting, because Cameron was watching me too, looking for signs that I knew what was coming, and I had to spend 2 weeks pretending to be a man who didn't realize his brother was building toward his destruction. I played nervous. I played like a man with a secret he was desperate to protect. Every time Cameron thought he'd gotten closer to my truth, I let a flicker of fear cross my face, real seeming, calculated, and I'd hear his thought, he's scared, he knows I'm circling it, good, the exposure is going to land like a nuke. And I'd think back, you have no idea, brother, and keep my face afraid. Penny's role was the public narrative, and she played it like the 11 million follower virtuoso she was. While Cameron maneuvered in the boardroom's shadows, Penny spent 2 weeks quietly, warmly, building the Vance family's public image into an unassailable fortress of wholesomeness, content of the family cooking together, of me helping Hazel in her lab, of Bianca teaching the youngest cousins self-defense, of the whole loving clan being aggressively, virally lovable. She wasn't refuting any accusation because none had been made yet. She was preloading the public so that when Cameron eventually tried to sell his story of the cold family and the fraud brother and the wronged true heir, It would crash against weeks of evidence that the Vances were the most loving family in the country, and Cameron was the newcomer they'd welcomed with open arms. She was building the jury's opinion before the trial. Bianca's role was the evidence, the hard kind. While I gathered Cameron's motives from his thoughts, Bianca, head of security, gathered the physical proof, the records of Cameron's meetings with Arthur, the money trail from the Calloway Group, the communications between Cameron and the dissident board members. Thoughts aren't admissible, but Bianca turned every thought I caught into a thread she could pull in the real world until we had a documented, provable, undeniable case that the wronged, true heir was the architect of a financed hostile takeover in league with a convicted fraudster. And Hazel's role, the soft scientist, was the one that surprised everyone, including Cameron, especially Cameron. Because Hazel had been cataloging Cameron's inconsistencies since the day he arrived, the shifting orphanage dates, the contradictions in his tragic backstory, and what she found, digging with her researcher's rigor into the actual history Cameron claimed, was that significant parts of his sympathetic origin story were fabricated. The DNA was real. He was genuinely the switched-at-birth son. But the heartbreaking narrative he'd built around it, the cruel orphanage, the years of suffering, the noble quest to find his family, much of it was invented, embellished, a sob story constructed to maximize sympathy. Cameron's real history was far more ordinary and far less tragic than the tale he told, and Hazel had the documentation to prove it, which meant that on top of the takeover and the scheming, we could shatter the emotional foundation of his entire protagonist act. We assembled the whole case over 2 weeks, while Cameron, certain he was winning, pushed his takeover toward its climax. An emergency board meeting where he would formally present his claim to controlling shares, backed by the dissident faction and the Calloway financing, and where, I knew from his thoughts, he planned to unveil his masterstroke, the public exposure of his imposter brother as a soul-stealing fraud, to delegitimize the family and clinch the board's swing votes. He was going to play both cards at the board meeting, the takeover and the exposure. The full Chapter 40 finale performed exactly as the novel promised, in front of the board, the family, and the press Penny would ensure was watching. He thought it was his coronation. We were building his funeral. The night before the board meeting, Cameron made his move to confirm my secret, the move we'd been steering him toward for 2 weeks, and I let it happen, because we needed him fully committed. He came to my room, alone, and he dropped the brotherly act, and he told me he knew. "I know what you are," he said, his eyes glittering with the certainty of a man holding a winning hand. "You're not Jules. You're a transmigrator, a soul-stealing imposter wearing a dead boy's body. I have proof, enough to convince a board and a family and a country. And tomorrow, when I claim my birthright, I'm going to expose you as the fraud you are, and watch this family realize they've been doting on a parasite, and watch you cast out exactly the way the story says you should be." He smiled. "Any last words, brother? Any reason I shouldn't end you tomorrow in front of everyone?" And I gave him the performance of my life. I let my face fill with fear, with desperation, with the terror of a man whose secret is about to destroy him. "Please," I said, and I made my voice shake. "Please, Cameron, they can't know. It would destroy them if they find out I'm not really their brother. Please, I'll give you anything. I'll leave. I'll disappear. Just don't tell them. Don't take their son from them like that." And I watched Cameron drink in my fear like wine, watched his certainty harden into absolute confidence, watched him decide that he had me, that the Chapter 40 exposure was going to work exactly as written. "Too late for deals," he said, savoring it. "Tomorrow everyone learns what you are. Sleep well, imposter. It's your last night as a Vance." He left, triumphant, certain, fully committed to playing a bomb that we had already defused, in a room we already controlled, in front of a family that had already chosen me, secret and all. And the moment the door closed, I dropped the terrified act, and Skylar slid out of my closet where she'd been listening, grinning like the cat that got every canary in the county, holding up the recorder that had just captured Cameron Hayes, explicitly confessing to the entire scheme, the takeover, the blackmail, the planned exposure, all of it, in his own voice. "Got it," she said. "Every word. Big brother, your acting was disgusting. I almost believed you'd cry. 10 out of 10. She tucked the recorder away. He thinks tomorrow is his coronation. He thinks he's about to expose your deepest secret to a horrified family and win everything. Her grin turned positively feral. He has no idea the family already knows your secret. He has no idea we have his entire confession. He has no idea the board's been turned, the narrative's been built, and his sob story's been documented as a lie. He's going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow and play his trump card, the big reveal. Your brother is a soul-stealing imposter, and the family is going to look at him like he just announced that water is wet, because they already know, and they already chose Jules, and then we drop everything on him at once. She held up her hand for a high five. Tomorrow, Cameron Hayes learns the most important lesson there is about being genre-aware, big brother. Knowing how the story is supposed to go is worthless if your opponent is willing to write a new one. I high-fived my gremlin sister, and in my vision, Melon, reformatted now, its escape directive gone forever, opened a brand new window, the first quest of whatever it had become, and it read, New directive. Protect the family you chose. Tomorrow's objective. Let Cameron Hayes hang himself with the rope he thinks is a crown. Probability of success. And the system, my companion, my friend, who had spent a month telling me to run and had finally learned, like me, that some things are worth staying for, finished with the only number that had ever mattered. Probability of success. High, host, because you're not fighting alone anymore. You never have to fight alone again. Now get some sleep. You've got a brother to destroy in the morning and a family to do it with. The emergency board meeting of Vance Industries convened at 10 in the morning in the great glass boardroom on the top floor of the Vance Tower, and it was, by Cameron's design and Penny's quiet arrangement, the most watched corporate event of the year. Cameron had wanted an audience for his coronation. We had been delighted to provide one. The press was in the lobby. The full board was at the table. The family was present as major shareholders. And Cameron Hayes walked in wearing a tailored suit now, no more thrift store tuxedo, the very picture of the true heir come to claim his throne, and he had no idea he was walking into the most thoroughly prepared ambush of his life. He opened beautifully, I'll give him that. He stood at the head of the table and presented his case with real skill, the confirmed DNA, his legal claim to controlling shares under the family trust, the support of board members Preston, Lynn, and Everett, the financing arranged through the Callaway Group. He framed it all in the protagonist's narrative, the wronged true son, raised in suffering, returning to claim what was stolen, forced to take action because the family that displaced him refused to acknowledge his rightful place. It was a polished, professional, genuinely compelling presentation of a hostile takeover dressed as a restoration of justice. Several board members nodded. The dissident faction looked confident. And I sat beside Genevieve and listened to Cameron's thoughts beneath the performance. They're buying it. The narrative's landing. Now build to the reveal. Set up the brother, then drop the bomb and watch the family's credibility collapse. And I kept my face carefully, performatively nervous, the frightened imposter dreading exposure, right up until the moment Cameron reached for his trump card. But before this board votes, Cameron said, his voice taking on a grave, sorrowful tone, there is something you all deserve to know. Something about this family's judgment. Something that should make every shareholder question whether the Vances are fit to control this company at all. He turned, slowly, theatrically, and pointed at me. That man, the one they call their beloved adopted son, their forensic genius, their darling Jules. He paused for maximum effect, the Chapter 40 exposure, the killing blow. He is not Julian Reed. The real Julian Reed is gone. That man is an imposter, a soul-stealing fraud from, I can hardly say it, from another world entirely, who took over the boy's body a month ago and has been deceiving this entire family ever since. They have been doting on a parasite wearing their dead son's face. And if they can't see through a fraud living in their own home, sharing their own dinner table, how can they be trusted to run this company? I have proof. We know, said my mother. Cameron stopped. The boardroom went very still. I'm sorry, he said. We know, my mother repeated, calm and clear, addressing the whole board now. About Jules, about the change. We've known for some time. He told us everything himself weeks ago, of his own free will, because that's the kind of man he is. And we chose him. We chose our son, in whatever form he came to us, because he is the one who fights for this family, while you, Cameron, are the one trying to tear it apart for money." She folded her hands. "So your great revelation, the secret you've been hoarding to destroy us? It's old news in the Vance household. We discussed it over dinner. Skylar made a joke about an ant. It was a lovely evening. I watched Cameron's entire memorized script die in real time. I watched the Chapter 40 exposure, the move he'd built his whole strategy around, the bomb he was so certain would shatter the family, detonate harmlessly in his own hands, because the family had already absorbed the blast weeks ago and chosen me anyway. His thoughts were a beautiful chaos. They know? They already know? But the exposure is the whole. The novel says the family always rejects the imposter. Why didn't they? This isn't the beat. This isn't how it... "You're confused," I said, and I let the frightened imposter act fall away completely, and I stood up, and I watched Cameron register the calm where my fear had been and understand far too late that he'd been played for 2 weeks. "You're confused because you read a book, and you thought the book was a map. But the book was wrong about me from the first page. It said I was a forgettable pushover. I exposed an embezzler over soup. It said the family would cast out the imposter. They chose him over their own blood. It said you were the protagonist who couldn't lose." I smiled. "It was wrong about that too, because while you were running a memorized script, brother, we were writing a new one. And in our version, you just confessed to a hostile takeover in front of the board and the press, played your only weapon and missed, and handed us the moment we've been building toward for 2 weeks. I turned to Skylar. "Sister, would you do the honors?" And then the family went to work, and it was glorious. Skylar played the recording, Cameron's voice filling the glass boardroom, confessing the entire scheme. The takeover, the Callaway financing, the alliance with Arthur, the plan to blackmail and expose me. All of it, in his own words, captured the night before. The dissident board members went pale. Bianca distributed the evidence dossier, the documented money trail, the records of Cameron's meetings with the convicted fraudster Arthur Davies, the communications with Preston and Lynn and Everett, turning vague support into provable conspiracy. Hazel presented her research, the methodical dismantling of Cameron's fabricated sob story, proving that the tragic orphan narrative he'd used to win sympathy was substantially invented. And Penny, who'd been live-streaming the entire meeting to her 11 million followers and the assembled press, simply let the world watch the wronged true heir reveal himself as a manipulative schemer in real time. The narrative she'd spent 2 weeks preloading, crashing down on Cameron exactly as designed. And Genevieve, the Ice Queen, the heir, delivered the killing blow, the corporate one, the one that actually mattered. Cameron Hayes' legal claim to controlling shares, she announced to the board, is real. The DNA is genuine. He is, by blood, entitled to a share of the family trust. And we will honor that, because this family honors its obligations even to people who try to destroy it. He'll receive his fair inheritance, in trust, structured so it can never again be leveraged against this company. She let that land, the mercy that was also a cage. But a hostile takeover requires board support and outside financing. And as the board has just learned, that support was built on conspiracy with a convicted criminal and financing from a group now exposed as backing a fraudulent scheme. Preston, Lynn, Everett, your participation in this is documented. You'll resign by end of day, or you'll be removed for cause and face the legal consequences of conspiring in a fraud-backed takeover. The Callaway Group will withdraw its bid within the hour because I've already spoken to their board this morning and shown them the evidence, and they have no interest in being the financiers of record on a scheme this publicly collapsed. She turned to Cameron finally, the full glacial force of her. Your takeover is dead. Your coalition is gone. Your narrative is in pieces on Penny's live stream. And your one weapon, my brother's secret, turned out to be a thing this family had already forgiven before you ever got to use it. You came here to take everything. You're leaving with a fair inheritance you can't weaponize and a public reputation as the man who tried to destroy the family that welcomed him. That's the deal. It's more than you offered us. Take it and go. Cameron Hayes stood at the head of the boardroom, his coronation turned to ash, his script burned, his every move countered before he made it, and I watched the full understanding land on him. The understanding that he'd lost, not because his plan was bad, but because he'd been so certain the story would carry him that he'd never imagined an opponent willing to throw the story away. His thoughts, when I tuned in one last time, were no longer scheming. They were just lost, and underneath the loss, that flicker I'd seen in the garden. The orphan who'd read a book about a family and wanted it so badly he'd tried to take it by force instead of earning it. I just wanted it to be mine, he was thinking. The family, the doting. The book made it look so easy. Why did it work for the fake and not for me? Why did they choose him? And because I am, in the end, not Cameron. Because the whole point of this story is the difference between the man who takes and the man who's chosen, I did something nobody expected. I walked around the table to my defeated brother, and I didn't gloat, and I said quietly just to him, they chose me because I stopped trying to take and started trying to give. That's the whole secret, Cameron. That's the part the book never tells you, because the book is garbage. The family wasn't a prize to be claimed, it was a thing to be built, by showing up and choosing them and staying when staying was hard. I held his lost eyes. You're their blood. That's real, and it's yours, and no one can take it. The door isn't locked, but you don't get to walk through it carrying a weapon. Put it down. Earn your way in, like I did, like anyone has to. The inheritance Sarah's giving you is a chance, not a consolation prize. Don't waste it trying to win a story that's already over. Just be a person they could choose. It's slower than a takeover, but it's the only version that's real. I stepped back. Now go. And if you ever decide you actually want a brother instead of a throne, you know where to find dinner. Sundays. We do this whole thing every Sunday. The soup's gotten a lot more interesting lately. Cameron Hayes left the boardroom a defeated man, but not a destroyed one, because I decided, and the family had agreed, that we would be the kind of people the novel never imagined, the kind who win without becoming the thing they beat. The press swarmed. Penny's live stream broke her own viewing record. The Callaway bid collapsed by noon. The dissident board members resigned by 3. And by the end of the day, the hostile takeover that was supposed to be Cameron's coronation and my destruction was a national news story about the Vance family's beloved adopted son and the brilliant, loving sisters who'd defended their family against a scheme. And somewhere in the wreckage of it, Arthur Davies, whose role as Cameron's co-conspirator was now thoroughly documented, found his bail revoked and his remaining freedom evaporating. The embezzling fiancé and the scheming heir going down together, undone by a family that fought as one. That evening, the family gathered in the living room, victorious, exhausted, loud, and my father raised a glass and said, "To Jules, who could have run and chose to stay and fight and win with all of us beside him." And 5 sisters and 2 parents raised their glasses to the transmigrated stranger who'd planned to abandon them and had become instead the keystone of the family. And I sat in the warm, noisy center of the people I'd chosen and who'd chosen me back. And I felt the last echo of the gutter from chapter 40 fade away into a future the novel never wrote, because we'd burned the novel's ending and written our own. In my vision, Melon, reformatted, content, opened one final window, and it didn't say escape, and it didn't say extract, and it didn't say run. It said, objective complete. The family is safe. The threat is neutralized. The host is home. A pause. Host, when I activated, I told you these people were a death trap, and your only hope was to get out before they got attached. I have never been more wrong about anything. They weren't the trap. The trap was the story that said you didn't belong, and you escaped it the only way anyone ever escapes a story like that. You refused to play your part. The system, my friend, my companion through the loneliest month of 2 lifetimes, finished quietly. Welcome home, Jules. For real this time. I think you're going to like it here. Life after you defeat your evil, genre-aware brother and accidentally tell your entire family you're an interdimensional soul who reads minds is, I have to report, extremely chaotic, and the best thing that has ever happened to me. Let me tell you how it all settled. Because the settling is where the real story lives, and because you deserve to know what happens to a fake young master who refuses to die in chapter 40. The telepathy stayed, and the family decided, with the unanimous, insane confidence of the Vances, that this was a feature and not a problem, and they integrated it into daily life with a speed that, frankly, alarmed me. The channel still glitches open at the worst moments. Melon has never fully fixed the relay, and so family dinners now come with the constant low-grade danger that everyone might suddenly hear exactly what I think about the soup, the conversation, or the questionable life choices of whoever's currently dating one of my sisters. Far from finding this stressful, my family treats it as the household's premier form of entertainment. Penny has tried to monetize it approximately 40 times. Bianca uses me as a human lie detector for vetting new security hires, which is genuinely useful and which she pays me for in protein bars and grunts of approval. Hazel consults me on whether her research assistants actually understand the work or are just nodding, which has dramatically improved her lab's output. My mother deploys me at business dinners like a secret weapon, seating me strategically across from people she's negotiating with, and the Vance Industries quarterly numbers have, I am told, never looked better. I am, in the most literal sense, the family's most valuable asset, which is exactly the indispensability Melon's revised directive demanded. Except it turns out indispensability built on love feels nothing like indispensability built on fear, and I'd take this version every time. The question everyone asks, of course, the one the original novel's whole genre is built around, is the one about the sisters. Because in my 5 domineering sisters dote on me, the trashy book that started all this, the adopted brother is not blood related to any of the sisters, and the novel leans, with all the subtlety of a falling piano, into the implication that the doting could become something more. And I am here to tell you that real life is both messier and far funnier than the book, because here is the actual truth about me and my 5 impossible sisters, and it is the truth I'm choosing on my own terms. The way I chose everything else. They're my family, all 5 of them, full stop. I know that's not the spicy answer the genre promises, but here's the thing the novel never understood, the thing I figured out somewhere between exposing Arthur and burying Cameron. I spent my first weeks in this world so terrified of being cast out, so certain I didn't belong, that what I needed wasn't a romance. What I needed was a home, a place where I was chosen and safe and loved without conditions, by people who'd seen exactly what I was and picked me anyway. And 5 sisters who would each individually burn down a city for me, who fight over who gets to sit next to me at dinner, who have a shared group chat titled Jules Protection Squad that I'm not supposed to know about but obviously do because I read minds, gave me that. They gave me the one thing I'd never had in either life, the unshakable certainty of belonging. And I am not going to complicate the most healing relationship of my existence by mapping a garbage web novel's wish fulfillment onto it. They're my sisters. I'd die for any of them. I'm not marrying any of them. The end. Write your angry comments. Melon will read them to me and we'll laugh. What I will tell you is what each of them became to me, because that's the love story that actually matters. Genevieve, the Ice Queen, stopped being cold with me entirely. And it turns out that under the glacier was the fiercest, most loyal heart in the family. And she's grooming me, not as a romance and not as a rival, but as her actual right hand at Vance Industries. Because my telepathy and my forensic instinct make me the perfect partner for a CEO who needs to know who's lying to her. And we are, the business press has noted with some confusion, the most effective sibling executive team in the country. She calls me every morning. She's never once let me feel like a placeholder again. Penny, the Chaos Goblin, made me her permanent co-conspirator, and our content, the rare times I allow it, breaks the internet. But mostly she just stopped treating me like a prop and started treating me like the one person who sees through her performances to the genuinely brilliant, genuinely insecure person underneath. And I keep her secrets, all of them, the ones she thinks and doesn't say. And she knows I keep them. And that's made us close in a way her 11 million followers will never touch. Bianca, the silent warrior, appointed herself my eternal guardian, and she means it with a literalness that would be frightening if it weren't so comforting. And she taught me to fight, because she refuses to have a brother who can't protect himself, and our sparring sessions are the closest thing to conversation she enjoys. And I have learned to read entire paragraphs of love in the specific way she throws me to the mat and then offers a hand up. Hazel, the soft scientist with the steel core, became my confidant, the one I tell the hard things to, the transmigration grief, the strange survivor's guilt of wearing a dead boy's face, the homesickness for a world I can never return to, and she listens with her whole heart and her researcher's precision. And she's the one who said, one night, the thing that healed something I didn't know was broken. The original Jules was disappearing for years before you came. Maybe you didn't take his life. Maybe you saved it, by being someone who could finally live it. Maybe you're not the imposter who replaced him. Maybe you're the answer to a prayer the whole family was praying and didn't know how to say. And Skylar, the gremlin, my partner, the one who saw through me first and chose me anyway, became my best friend in either world. My co-strategist, my fellow schemer, the sister who knows all my secrets and helps me keep them, and helps me decide which ones to share. She's the one who keeps me honest. She's the one who, when I get scared again, when the old Chapter 40 dread creeps back, when I catch myself wondering if I really get to keep all this, looks at me with her terrifying, clever eyes and says, "Big brother, you already won. Stop waiting for the story to take it back. There's no story anymore. There's just us. Now pass the soup, and try not to broadcast what you think about my new boyfriend, because I already know he's a himbo. I picked him on purpose. Leave me alone." As for Cameron, the brother who tried to destroy me, the story isn't finished, and I like it better that way. He took the inheritance Genevieve structured for him, and he left, and for a while we heard nothing. And then, about 3 months later on a Sunday, the doorbell rang during dinner, and it was Cameron, standing on the step in an ordinary coat, no schemes in his eyes, no DNA folder, no plan. Just a lost young man who'd read a book about a family and finally, slowly, understood that the book had taught him exactly the wrong lesson about how to get one. He didn't ask for anything. He just said, "I heard you do this every Sunday. The soup thing. I don't have anywhere to be." And I looked at my family, and my mother was already getting up to set another place, because that's who she is. That's who they all are. And I stepped aside and let my blood brother into the warm, noisy house, on probation, on the slow path, the earned way, the only real way. And he sat down at the table, wary and hopeful, and Skylar immediately started roasting him, which, in this family, is how you know someone's been accepted. And I tuned into his thoughts just once, carefully, and what I heard was not a scheme. It was just, quietly, disbelievingly, they let me in. After everything, they actually let me in. And I thought, you have to earn it from here, brother, but yeah, that's how it works. That's how it always worked. I just had to stop running long enough to find out. People ask me, in this life, and sometimes in dreams of the old one, whether I'd go back if I could. Whether I miss my original world, my normal life, my normal job, the self I was before I fell asleep reading a trashy novel and woke up in a doomed boy's body with a system telling me to run. And I tell them the truth, which I learned the hard way, over soup, with the people I almost abandoned. No, because the system was wrong, and the novel was wrong, and the Chapter 40 ending was wrong, and the only thing that was ever right was the thing I almost ran away from. I came into this world as an imposter scheduled to die in a gutter, hiding from a family I was certain would cast me out the moment they knew the truth. And I leave you as a chosen son, a trusted brother, the keystone of a family that knows exactly what I am and loves me anyway, that fought beside me, that burned the ending I was promised and wrote me a better one. I didn't escape the Vance family. I escaped the story that said I didn't deserve them. And those are not the same thing at all. The system that was supposed to help me run is still with me, reformatted, my friend, now, and it has one directive left, the one I chose, and it's the only one that ever mattered. Stay. Stay, and protect them, and let them protect me, and show up every Sunday for soup that gets more interesting every week. I transmigrated into a trashy wish fulfillment novel as the adopted fake young master, with a system glued to my soul whose one mission was to help me escape my family before they could get attached, and before the story could destroy me. I never used it. I let them get attached instead. I let myself get attached. I told them the worst truth about myself and let them choose me. And the family that the system swore was a death trap turned out to be the only thing in 2 whole lifetimes that ever felt like home. So if you're out there, reading some story that tells you you don't belong, that you're an imposter, that the people who love you would stop if they knew the real you, that the safe move is to run before they get attached, let me tell you what a glitching telepathic system and 5 domineering sisters taught a doomed fake young master over a bowl of cold soup. Don't run. Tell them the truth, resolves, and find out, the way I did, that the love you were so sure was conditional was the realest thing you ever had. And that the home you thought you had to escape was, the entire time, just waiting for you to stop being afraid and stay. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's Sunday, and the channel just glitched open, and Penny is thinking something about a new business venture that I absolutely have to shut down before she says it out loud, and Bianca is judging Cameron's posture, and Hazel made the soup, and Genevieve is pretending she's not happy and failing, and Mom is watching all of it with the smug satisfaction of a woman whose impossible family is finally complete. And Skylar just caught my eye across the table and grinned, because she knows I can hear that she's about to start something. This is my family. I chose them. They chose me. And no story in any world is ever taking them away. 1 year later, I can tell you how it all turned out, because people always want the epilogue, and this family earned a good one. Vance Industries, defended and then strengthened, had its best year in a decade, and Genevieve and I run it together now, the Ice Queen and her mind-reading right hand, the most feared and effective leadership team in the country. And the business press has stopped trying to figure out how we always seem to know exactly who's lying in every negotiation. We let them wonder. Genevieve smiles more now, not in public, but at the family table more than she used to, and I like to think I had something to do with that. Penny hit 20 million followers and used the platform, to everyone's surprise, to fund a foundation for kids aging out of the foster system, real ones, with real oversight, the anti-Arthur. And she made me the chief fraud officer, which means I read the mind of every vendor and partner to make sure not 1 cent gets stolen, and it's the best job I've ever had. The duck story remains sealed. Our mutually assured destruction holds. We are closer than ever. Bianca married Grant in a ceremony that lasted 11 minutes because neither of them likes talking, and it was the most moving wedding I've ever attended. 2 terrifying warriors finally using their words. And at the reception, Bianca pulled me aside and grunted, "You did this," and handed me a custom protein bar with my name on the wrapper, which I understand is the single most emotional gift Bianca Vance has ever given another human being, and I will be buried with the wrapper. Hazel married Dr. Montgomery, who still brings her coffee every morning and still doesn't know I read his mind to greenlight him, and they won some enormous scientific prize together for the research someone tried to sabotage, the research we saved, and in her acceptance speech, Hazel thanked my brother, who sees the truth in everyone and taught me to stop being afraid of being seen. And I had to leave the room for a minute. Skylar got into the university she wanted on a full scholarship she didn't need, purely to prove she could, and she's studying strategy and game theory. And she calls me every week to scheme about nothing in particular, just because we like scheming together. And last month she said offhandedly, "You know you're my favorite person in any world, right, big brother?" And then immediately threw a grape at me so we wouldn't have to be sincere about it, which is the most Skylar way imaginable of saying, "I love you." And Cameron comes to dinner now, every Sunday. It took months, the slow path, the earned way, but he put the knife down, and he sat at the table, and he let himself be a person worth choosing, and the family chose him too, because that's who they are. That's who they've always been. He and I will never be the brothers who didn't try to destroy each other once. But we're the brothers who chose to be brothers anyway, afterward, on purpose, which might be the realer thing. He's studying to actually run a piece of the family business, legitimately, from the ground up, and he's good at it. And last week he told me, quietly, doing the dishes, "I read that book 1,000 times trying to figure out how to win the family. I never once thought about just being someone they'd want. You're the one who taught me that. The fake young master." He smiled, a real one. "Turns out you were the realest one of all of us." And I tuned into his thoughts, just to check, the old habit. And underneath there was no scheme, no script, no plot, just a man who'd finally come home. And I left him his privacy and dried the dishes he washed. 2 brothers in a warm kitchen, the novel's ending burned so completely that even the villain got a better one. As for me, the transmigrated stranger, the fake young master, the soul wearing a dead boy's face, the man who arrived with a system telling him to run, I'm just Jules now. The Vance who reads minds and keeps secrets and protects the family and shows up every Sunday. The keystone, the chosen son, the brother. I never went home to my old world, and I stopped missing it because I'm already home. More home than I ever was there, in a loud, warm, impossible house full of people who know exactly what I am and love me anyway, which is the only miracle that ever mattered in any universe I've lived in. The system that was supposed to help me escape is quiet these days, content, my oldest friend in this world, and every so often, on a good night, when the whole family is gathered and the noise is high and the love is thick enough to lean on, it opens one last little window in the corner of my vision, just to remind me, just because it knows I still sometimes need to hear it. You're home, host. You stayed. You chose them, and they chose you. And the story that said you didn't belong is ash. Now stop reading my notifications and pass your mother the soup. She's been waiting. We've all been waiting. Welcome home, Jules. For good. I pass my mother the soup. The channel glitches open. Everyone hears exactly what I think about how much I love them. Every embarrassing word of it. Broadcast in surround sound to the whole table. No walls left. Fully known, fully chosen. Nobody minds. It's just family. It's just home. And no story in any world was ever taking them away.